really appreciate you devoting this work session just to priority setting. Before Melanie gets into the presentation, one of the things I'd like to point out is that we've been talking about a well-managed government for some time now. And what you'll have in your packets are some examples of what we call strategic planning or outcome-driven processes. If we're really going to be what we've been calling a data-driven organization, it's very important that we get before council again to reaffirm or establish what the priorities will be for the city. What you'll see in the budget book, each year are these 6 priorities which you have in terms of the agenda overview: community building, education, public accountability, economic development, public safety, and regional partnerships. I will tell you that that's a process that took place in the mid-1990s, and over time there have been some attempts to revisit it, but really what we have are basically 6 bullets. When you start to look at some of the other jurisdictions across the country, they have taken their priorities and really had priority statements. And basically what's occurring is each process that occurs in those jurisdictions are really driven by the priorities that are set. So again, the administration is very pleased that you would take the time to set aside a workshop just for that process. What I'd like to tell you is that we want to create a healthy organization for you. And we mean that in every sense of a healthy organization. And we're not there right now. Basically, we need to improve on how we do business. This is not going to be a request for additional resources. It's really once we identify what are the core priorities of the council and of the city, we want to focus on those core priorities, and then we'll take our resources and we'll be able to shift those resources to those priorities. There are some things that you'll see in our discussion today that maybe you don't see transportation, or maybe you don't see the environment as one of the priorities. My time in Richmond, one of the things that we did was we really started to look at the whole concept of priority-driven organizations. And you'll see that when we had that process a couple of years ago, we started off with basically 16 priorities. And over the course of about a year, we got that down to about 7. So what we're going to ask of you today is, and we have some examples, and again, Ms. Purcell will basically be our facilitator today. We want to sit back, we want to listen to you. We want to, again, show you some of the examples that are best practices across the country, with the end basically being if we could get to maybe 5 to 7 priorities. What we'll do as an administration, we will be able to take goals, objectives, performance measures, and even evaluations that tie back to those priorities. And I will assure you that it will be basically taken throughout the whole organization all the way to the level of performance reviews or evaluations. So again, that's basically what we're trying to achieve today, if that's okay with the council. Sure. Okay. What I would like to do is, before I turn it over to Melanie, one of the things that's important, a lot of that we've been hearing around the city and in the communities is the concept of just a healthy city. What we intend to do is come back to you this month with a Healthy City Initiative, which is basically talking about things, not just the way we eat or the way we exercise, but partnerships with some of our different entities such as Norfolk Public Schools, the Health Department, and what's walkable, what's bikeable, what can we do in this community to make sure that having a healthy community is extremely important. We're excited about it. It's amazing. It goes not just from the health department, it goes all the way to planning. It's how we do business. And we are going to bring that initiative back to you this month. So with that said, basically what I mentioned earlier in this presentation on the first slide, basically we talked about, and I think as early as February, the concept of strategic policy being developed at the council level, the vision as well as the priorities. Now today we're talking about priorities. I will tell you that the vision is pretty long, okay? And I would hope that in your retreat in September that we would be able to talk about the vision for the city also. In a typical process, you start with the vision and then you go to the priorities. But right now we believe that the priorities, that there are some opportunities for some changes. So with that, that's going to help us, more or less, I want to say, put some meet around, get around that vision, which is very long, as we'll start to compare with some of the other cities. But having said that, it's important for us today to focus on the priorities, because after that, it's basically back to the administration when we start to look at goals, objectives, performance measures, as well as the evaluation for results. Now, we've said a well-managed government, so that's what you're going to hear from us over and over again. With that said, different jurisdictions have different titles. You know, for instance, in Austin, Texas, they call it a strategic plan, where they have focus areas and priorities. There's also outcome-based budgeting in Florida. We have results-based accountability in the city of Durham, which we have a number of folks on staff from Durham, and that's a good process. I will say many of these processes are very good processes. I really like the Durham example. Performance-based budgeting in Boulder, Colorado, as well as we talk about quality, and that's Coral Springs, Florida. So there are a number of different ways to get to what we're calling a well-managed government, but they all have common themes, as you'll see on slide 3. And that's just outcome focused. We look at a specific desired results are identified. So even though we may discuss education today, at some point as an administration, we need to get back to you and engage the community to make sure what does that mean to us when we call education a priority. The next bullet, the changes that are going to take place, which we talked a great deal as an administration about what happens at the end of today. Well, the priorities, it may be something that is simple, and maybe it takes us a few meetings to get there, but what's important is what's going to happen after today. Because I will tell you that in terms of performance measures, in terms of goals and objectives, that's not going to happen in a day. It's not going to happen in 30 days. It's not going to happen in 90 days. Typically, this is a 2-year process, sometimes a 3-year process. We don't want to make it a 2 to 3 year process because we want to see some results earlier than that. But as we go through this, we'll also talk about what do we intend to see within the short term, which would be 1 to 2 years, the medium term, 3 to 5 years, as well as the long term, 5 years and more. So today, we're going to try to get to a point that hopefully the council will give us 5 to 7 priorities that we can start to begin as the foundation for this administration. Again, I mentioned about the desired outcomes. How do we measure success, both in the short term, the medium term, and the long term? You can see that we didn't say anything under 2 years. We call that now. So the expectation is if it's not in the short term, it's immediate. And again, over the next 18 months, what we will do is draft priority statements. So again, we don't want to be in a situation where you just have a term that says education. What does that mean to you? And you will hear that over and over again today, that question. Again, we will give you regular updates about where we are. We will engage the community. In other words, once we get the priorities, it's very important with any successful process to make sure that the community has buy-in with that. And we are going to continue to build on our organizational infrastructure. So with that said, Melanie has volunteered to facilitate the process today. She has a great deal of experience in this area. And Mayor, you have a question?
Can I make an introduction? I meant to at the very beginning. If I could get, Brian, could you stand up for a second? A new member of the clerk's office who's been assigned to the mayor's office is Brian Thomas. Brian is a graduate of Granby High School, graduated studying government at the University of Virginia, and has just finished law school at the University of Richmond. Along the way, he played football at the UVA for a couple of years. He, I guess what, he was a page in the General Assembly, he was a page in the U.S. Senate, and interned in the White House. And now he's back here in local government where the action is. So, Brian, if you see him around, he's part of the team. Okay. Okay, thanks, please.
Hi there. What I'd like to talk about a little bit is some of the things that we've seen across the country. There's a number of processes, like Marcus mentioned. We have a number of different names that people call this. But really the idea is to set some priorities, focusing on the outcomes, and recognizing that there's an investment in how you change businesses. The City of Boulder happens to be one of the premier examples as they've gone through outcome-based budgeting. They just happen to have, they've overcome some extraordinary community issues. They have established these areas as areas that they see as where they want to focus their energies. And the whole premise is, where do we want the effort put? So as you see, accessible connected communities, economically vital, healthy environment communities, close and socially thriving, and safe community. These are just the titles. In your packet are a lot of the different descriptions, and we'll get into those.
Boulder was also recognized as the city that was the happiest in the city, in the state of the United States.
Charlotte, North Carolina is also.
That wasn't.
No, they weren't. But it is considered what we frequently call a tier 1 city, vibrant, economically viable. Again, I have to admit, some of these I had picked with the idea of, one, they have really solid, strong processes. They've overcome some significant challenges. Positive, okay, sorry. Positive and negative. I have to admit, I'm a mover, so it's difficult to remind myself to stay still. These are all cities that have really institutionalized their processes, and they have done it over time, but they have established very high standards for how these processes work. Interesting with the city of Charlotte, they have environment at the bottom, and in their materials, environment is actually a circle in the middle, and they're recognizing that that particular focus area touches all the others. Success in environment is going to greatly impact success in any other area. Metro Nashville is Davidson County, Tennessee. Part of looking at them is that they are a combined unit. Most other states have overlapping jurisdictions. Virginia does not. So Metro Nashville is actually as close to comparable out of the state of Virginia as I can come up with that does this kind of process. They've also taken an approach of lumping things together under livability. Rather than isolate and force competition amongst these areas, they've decided that they're all interrelated. City of Austin, Texas. Austin likes to tell the world that it is the center of the universe. It's pretty good competition for us. What we have on the books right now, dating back from 1999 for the city of Norfolk, is community building, economic development, education, public accountability, public safety, regional partnerships. The question that's before you is, are these still the priorities, or are there more, or are there issues that should be included? Is there something that we're missing, perhaps, or do these really represent where we want to be? What do they mean?
What do they mean?
Okay.
For somebody like myself, who's just coming to this discussion for the first time, these are, community building is a buzzword or a phrase that I'm not familiar with. It means nothing to me. What do you? What is it? Okay, good.
Look at that, next slide.
Let's go there.
You didn't know I was clear.
She gave you that question.
That was gift wrapped for me. Thank you.
I'll take my check tomorrow.
Okay. We'll work that out. Chocolate chip oatmeal raisin. What does community building mean to you? These are some of the examples that came from other cities that sound like what we've heard in conversations with this group. They've called it neighborhoods, improving downtown and surrounding neighborhoods, long-range planning. Everybody calls it whatever they want to call it, what it represents to them, but the descriptions on the right-hand column struck me as something that relate to somewhat of what I've heard in terms of the conversations. So it's just an area to kind of start from, somewhere to think about. I always find it's a whole lot easier to edit than to draft. So engaging strong, distinct, vibrant neighborhoods, the place where people want to live, facilitating a sense of place. They're all descriptions that they're kind of buzzwords, but they give us some idea of what you mean by that. So the question I put back to you is, you get to talk a lot in this meeting. We're not going to present. What does community building mean to you?
To me, it means money.
Money.
It means money. I mean, if you're going to be realistic about this, when you're talking about the vibrancy, a sense of place, somewhere where people want to live, and having choice communities, that takes resources. And so that takes creativity to be able to do that. We know that when you slice that pie every year in terms of resources that are available to do some of the things that we have to do to strengthen all of our communities, then the issue is always money. Some communities are further along than others, but what are you talking about? Are you talking about the entire city? Or are you talking about pockets of our community?
The question I would
Are you talking
ask,
about what, did you say?
Pockets in our community? Or are you talking about the entire city?
what would you call successful in community building?
Well,
If you
What
go
would
look
I-
back a year from now and you want to say we achieved something in community building, what's it going to look like? That's
I couldn't answer that because that would require me to understand the forecast and understand the dollars that are going to be utilized, that are coming forth to be able to impact some of these communities.
Well, let's go at it with, if you don't mind, a kind of a different angle here. We're going to use this money to accomplish something. What is it that we want to see it accomplish? If we take money out of the picture, we got an unlimited pool. Break the rules for a minute. What is that going to accomplish for us? Is it going to be clean streets? Is it going to be fixed sidewalks? Is it going to be installation of sidewalks? Is it going to be neighborhoods that all have a central commercial district within them? Is it going to be everybody has the opportunity for home ownership? Is it mixed use development? What does the utopia of Norfolk look like? And community building may not be the name that we end up
I
with.
think if you ended up with a city where people lived in communities they wanted to live in, rather than they had to live in because of their economic conditions, then you would accomplish, in my mind, every neighborhood is where somebody, for a reason other than affordability, would want to be.
So, an ideal vision, and I'm going to use some of these words interchangeably, but an ideal description for us of what community building is a place where people get to live where they want to live.
Not have to live.
Not
because
have
of
to
their
live.
Socio-economic class, race, or whatever.
You guys got that? We have two fabulous
that
scribes
means-
going.
You had a lot of money, didn't you?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, absolutely. If we take money off the table, because part of this is when it's time
Whatever
to
it takes
rewrite the
accomplish that,
funding.
be it the infrastructure or the.
Okay, so all inclusive.
Business districts and playgrounds and fields,
So to piggyback off of that,
education, schools, the whole thing, all out of that, in my mind.
Okay.
and so to piggyback off of that would also be the elimination of concentrated areas of poverty.
That would do that.
So that would do that.
That would just,
That's
But
what
that-
she's saying.
Yeah, but that's then a component of.
Right.
The beauty of this is, unlike a mission statement, there's no limit. We're going to take everything you say and we're going to come back with some statements and have you say, yes, that's what we meant, or not quite what we meant. But in order to get a real feel of what the intent is, this conversation is ideal for that. Because there's going to be at least 8, probably a lot more different statements that come out about what this means to you.
But a critical piece to that is jobs, sustainable jobs.
Sustainable being.
Right.
Should we move forward a little bit? And we can always come back. We'll just keep going for a second. It sounds like community building is going to be a very encompassing arena when we talk about communities and what it takes to build them. Are we going
In
close
order
there?
to do that, you're gonna have to accomplish all the other things. Development, education, infrastructure, public safety, all of them.
Well, then maybe,
That's kind of the end
It really
game.
is kind of the umbrella
That's the
under
end
which
game
of all the other
of-
priorities are.
in my
good deal.
mind.
Well, that may get us to our vision statement sooner than we thought. Okay. Talking about economic development, since it's a component. And underlying this, in every single step of the way, the conversation, the question I'm asking you is this a focus area that you want to keep? Or is it generating some ideas for some that we want to add or delete or just change the name of? You're not stuck with any of this. This is what this group decides is where we want to put our energies and our resources and our investment of time.
We're just 6, 7 years into that economic development. We were the IDA, Industrial Development Authority. So I don't even think we truly got our feet
Feet wet.
wet in terms of truly understand the magnitude of what economic development means as we talk about an entire city.
Okay.
I once said that one of the things that we had to do is define the nodes in our city that we look to for economic development. For example, you got various communities throughout other cities. Like if I was in Richmond, I could go to Carytown. I know what's offered in Carytown. I know what's down in the Shockoe Slip. These places are defined. I know where I can go to for certain things. I don't think we've defined, no, I think that within 5 wards, there should be something that this city provides in every ward that's different. Whether it used to be that way. I think we've digressed in terms of that. And when you look at Church Street back in the day and what that represented, as well as Granby Street, And so you still have some, you got Colley Avenue, you got Granby Street, you got Military Circle. So you have all of these places, but we haven't defined destinations in our city. And I think that that's a part of it. I think that that's a hard conversation to have. But at the end of the day, it allows you to have a vision and move forward in terms of building those areas strategically.
Yeah, I think what's happened economically over the last, and I don't mean this necessarily in a bad way, but what's taken away from, I remember in the 70s was going to Military Circle, taken away from what's happened at Ward's Corner, is the emphasis it became downtown. And so we looked to downtown, 21st Street corridor developed off of that, and Colley has together. So, and I think what's occurred is that's with that focus to say that let's say at Military Circle, we used to have that as an economic engine, Ward's Corner was an economic engine. Things changed, focus has changed, it became the downtown area for economic engine, and that's, I think, what's happened.
It sounds like the conversation, though, is we want to define all the pieces that make economic development key.
Right. And I like what you're saying. We should have something that...
Right, but that, I truly think that in order, just me personally, but I truly think that we have to have a healthy downtown.
I agree.
I think that everything starts like the heart of our city. So I don't have a problem with that, because if the downtown is healthy, then it should be residual income that filters out to the other vessels in our city that make those communities vibrant and thriving.
Right, I didn't say it was a bad thing.
Right. I understand, but I just don't think we've defined, though Mr. Riddick tried to define, Church Street sometime. We talked about that for some time, but I just think that, in every ward, there should be something. And a lot of these fragile neighborhoods, if you will, I use the word fragile, there hadn't been the resources to be able to create anything there. We don't have grocery stores, we just got one 30 years later in Berkeley. But in some of these other communities, we don't have the quality of life amenities. And so we have to begin to to define, but that all goes back to resources at the end of the day.
I mean, a good example, what makes Church Hill, I remember, 25 years ago, you didn't go to Church Hill. I mean, it's just a place you didn't go in Richmond. I was just there, a year ago, touring Church Hill. So it was...
Still outskirts, you still don't go to Whipple.
But you asked a good question. What made you want to go there?
Yeah, I went because I was touring one of the famous churches there. And
So it was playing on a resource.
Right.
An available asset.
And the place, they've done a great job. I mean, it was, when I was there in the mid-'80s, you didn't go over there. You didn't go that Broad Street. But it's different. Carytown, why do you go to Carytown? You know what's there. I understand what you're saying. I'm not saying go down. I just think that the emphasis may have shifted in my own mind. I can't say it's in the citizens' mind. But we need to understand that. What made 21st Street successful? What has made it successful? And the Colley area, what has made that successful? And find out what made those successful to be able to transform that to church or to Military Circle, where I think we really have some serious issues.
You've mentioned a couple
And
things
Woods
that
Corner.
lean on character of neighborhoods and the nature of that neighborhood. And you've mentioned assets and utilizing those assets. Is that, in your mind, a function of success and economic development? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but trying to kind of... You've mentioned building on the neighborhoods, the character and the characteristics of those neighborhoods. You've mentioned what makes you go to these places, what assets are there, what have been built upon. In some communities, that would be considered a success in economic development, is building on the character of your neighborhoods and your existing assets to leverage economic success, economic resources. That's an option in how you look at what it is you want to accomplish. Part of where we're going to go with this, the end game, lack of another word, is once we establish priorities, that's how the decisions are made then and brought forward to you, is how they fit into that priority matrix. So economic development, you talk about resources, how do we put the funding in, how do we put the financials together? These priorities, whatever you call them, however you define them, they're going to get us there. So I think she had a comment and then,
Okay.
I'm
And
sorry.
I think part of the priority process, when we start to talk about neighborhoods and intertwining development strategies into neighborhoods, is that we talk to the neighborhoods and we talk to the citizens who live in those neighborhoods. I mean, the prime example is the dog park in Berkeley. You know, they didn't want a dog park and we just put one there. But we need to talk to the citizens and get their input as to what they would like to see, and then take that to what is also feasible in the area, because all the times what someone wants to see and what we can actually make happen there, or what we can put money behind or an engine behind to accomplish, those two things may not be the same. So then how do we compromise that so that the citizens that are there like the neighborhood, other citizens want to move into the neighborhood, and it's a happy medium. But I think when we start talking about priorities, we definitely have to reach out to the citizens that all this is going to affect.
Oh, one of the things I mentioned several years ago at one of our retreats is that from my observation, the underclass in Norfolk is rising at an alarming rate. And even since that time that I brought that attention to the previous administration, I see the underclass rising at a more alarming rate. I really believe that if we're going to do anything, we have to deal with the population in Norfolk. We have less educated populace in some of our communities, a less civil populace, less members of communities that are self-sufficient. And I'm talking in black and white communities. I see the underclass rising just as rapidly in the white community as I do in the black community. So in order for us to be successful with anything that we do, we have to create a more civil community, we have to create a more educated community, and we have to create more members of both communities are self-sufficient. So we can sit here and talk about our visions and our goals, but until we really get into the root of the individuals who will be experiencing what we are trying to put together, then we'll sort of be spinning our wheels. So I really believe that we need to do something to recognize that we have a huge problem in terms of the underclass that's rising in both of our communities.
Let's keep going, see how that ties into and how we pull that out as
Well,
what
how it
described.
ties into it, you have to, as I say, you have members of the community that are less civil. So somehow, now a lot of times government can't create civility. We have laws on the books that put people in our overcrowded jails, but government can't create civility. Education, we can do something about that. Self-sufficiency, we can teach individuals to be more self-sufficient through our school district. And so there are certain things that we can do as government, but there are a lot of things we can't do. as far as government is concerned. And the things that we can't do, as far as civility and things of that nature, then we have to bring in partnerships such as our faith-based communities and Boy Scouts, our sororities, our fraternities, things of that nature, our universities. Those are the things that we can bring in partnerships to help with some things that government can't do.
Now, I'm gonna piggyback on that. I'm gonna speak to the part that government can do. And I alluded to money earlier. I heard Ms. Williams, but I don't buy that philosophy in terms of certain communities can only reach a certain plateau in terms of what types of amenities they could have in their communities and the level of success these communities can have. I think the government can engineer what they would like to see. I mean, it's a bold undertaking, but it can be done. When I look at the city, and that's no blame on you, but when I look at the city respectfully, and I look at all that has taken place throughout the city, and I'll give an example. When I look at, downtown, a part of why downtown is successful in its own right is because they created a special taxing district to generate additional revenue to ensure that the things that needed to be done got done. We went out to Ocean View sometime before my tenure on council, and we invested close to $100 million in the infrastructure, taking down blight, so that one day this community could be vibrant again. And then we added a TIF onto that would allow that community to rise, and those revenues that are generated would help pay that money back. When I got on council, I listened to all of that and tried to understand how do I get communities that I serve into the ball game. Me and Barkley would commonly joke about, there's no money being generated. You get your slice of the pie when you create your slice of the pie. I was always told in this city that certain communities don't add to the overall formula. And so that's why the dollars are dispersed the way that they are. So I had to generate the opportunity or make the argument on paper in terms of that this community or that community is worthy of the resources because this is the output that these communities bring in. And so in doing so, we created a TIF back in 2009, and I'll speak to that, in the Broad Creek community. Prior to no one thinking that the TIF would perform as well as it did, it accelerated and outdid itself to the tune that I think we borrowed about $16.5 million. And, we're way ahead of the projected schedules to pay that back. Now, to the date, if you look at a community like Broad Creek and you say, well, the city has probably invested about $30 million over, I don't know, many years, but when I look at what the TIF is able to do, that's about $45 million. So when you look at a community that is generating revenue that's able to be sustaining and self-sufficient in its own right, in those geographical areas that money is being raised right there because of the revenue that the real estate taxes that community bring in. That's, to me, that's creative. So the goal there was, in order for that community to rise like other communities have done in the past, that those resources would be invested back into that community so we could continue to take down blight, create economic development, retail and commercial development, which will bring more money into the formula. And then those dollars that from neighborhood plans or other dollars that come in from a CIP standpoint could go to other fragile communities, or we can create TIFs in other communities. I understand that in the past some administrators didn't really care for doing that because they don't all perform at the same level if you do that. But this one has performed very well. And so to me, that's the creative way to be able to get our communities across the board on solid footing and be able to help out with other fragile communities. If I'm using the money that's generated out of that community, then that's less dollars that I got to use coming from the general fund or CIP dollars. But when you take those monies and throw it back in the pot and don't reinvest those dollars back into that community, it hurts the efforts at the end of the day.
What's a TIF?
Tax increment financing, so that if you do a development, the incremental tax created from it goes into the fund that Anthony's speaking about.
You mentioned several times investment, development, creativity.
Rock Creek, Ocean View.
This first example on the right kind of gives, on the right-hand column, mentions those words several times. Is that something, I mean, we've heard creativity, you know, thinking different, dedicated to source.
Right, but in the absence of the overall pie, and like I said, you can only cut it so many ways. Mm-hmm. So the creativity comes in when you can create other sources of revenue. That it's like outcome based. What's the term you used? Outcome based. What's the man?
Outcomes based or results accountability.
Outcome based budgeting.
Outcome based budgeting. It's basically that. It's basically saying, okay, here's the community here. Here's the parameters within that TIF. Okay, what you do, how you perform that money. We're going to let you manage those resources. You know, that money, you generate that revenue goes back in. Okay, you know, and so if you did that in a few other areas, if we invested, and I don't know the parameters in terms of, you know, but I do know that other communities have the potential. When you look at the St. Paul Quadrant, would be a ideal opportunity to, as you got, when we talk about how do we get there, we got infrastructure issues and everything, how do we get there? We don't have a Hope 6 grant. How do we, if you develop the TIF understanding the types of entities that will be in that community that would bring the real estate taxes up in that area, then that would perform in such a way where it doesn't have have a strain on the other communities within the city. So all I'm saying is that we got to look at every creative way of making things happen in the city without adversely affecting other projects that have been in the pipeline for some time.
Let me add something. Just because there's some figures at the top of my head because we're doing some research for the state and the city, but we've done a pretty good job in the city of expanding our tax base. Okay, and in 03, the assessed value of the tax base was just under $10 billion. Today, after a terrible economy and the loss of what was happening at the Ford plant and all that stuff, we're just under $20 billion. In about 7 or 8 years, we have doubled the assessed value of the city and maintained it. We've also created a lot of jobs. Brett pulled out the figures of something like 223,000 jobs in the city. For a city of 243,000 people, that's astounding. They're the best jobs. Overall, when you add wages and you add benefits, the individual job in the city of Norfolk averages about well over $70,000. Those are benefits and wages. Virginia Beach, for instance, is down around 53 something. The total economy in the city, when you add it up, according to the National Bureau of Labor Statistics, is about $13.9 billion. And Virginia Beach, for instance, is like $10.4 billion. So we've done a pretty good job of that. But Marcus, what I would fall back on, and I think something we're all hitting on here, is I don't think we've moved the poverty level at all. We still have the same amount of poverty in this city that we had 10 years ago. We still have an unemployment rate in the city that is second only to Williamsburg, as far as I'm aware of, in the whole Hampton Roads area. It's still pretty low by national standards, but something we've never really focused on like a laser is how do we connect Norfolk citizens with these jobs that are in the city? And how do we, and now with the census information that we I think we ought to identify with the best data possible these pockets of poverty and create action plans to improve the lives of the people who are living in poverty so they can create wealth and so they can be a part of the success that the rest of the city is enjoying. That would probably make those communities more civil. But while we have grown the tax base and while we have grown a lot of jobs, we still have the same percentage of people living in poverty that we did up there. I'd like somebody to go back and check that figure that we had 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. We just have not focused on that. We have these great vision statements like, building communities where everybody can live. The fact is, we haven't moved people can't do that, haven't been able to do it for a long time. And it should be up to us to try to make something meaningful happen in the lives of the folks who cannot help themselves. That's where we ought to talk about that constantly, in my opinion.
This has come up now in at least two of the areas that we've covered about addressing and connecting and making sure that all of the pockets, I use that term, of the community are connected and participating. People get to live where they want to live, not because they have to. Everyone has access to the jobs that we have created, the city has created.
Half the workworce comes from outside of the city every day. Why can't we do a better job of I mean, I guess probably issues
Well, I
we
think
have
it goes-
education and we have.
Goes right there with that slide, is education.
I'm gonna jump ahead because a couple of people have brought it up.
But
and
but
talked
other
about
things
partnering.
too.
Yeah.
But I still think it's at the crux of it. And just what Mr. Riddick's talking about, when you're talking about civility, and there aren't a lot of things government might be able to do, but this is maybe one thing that might be able to help.
Several
is
of you brought
education.
up partnerships. I want to draw your attention to Oklahoma Cities, which is down at the bottom on the right-hand side. I found it intriguing because they were specific, but not so much so that they got away from a priority statement. They were very specific about partnering with groups. Now, they limited it to children, and others said excellence for all. And they threw in things like that, talking about, and I have to apologize, I did have an awesome statement, but I couldn't figure out which city I'd snagged it from, so I left it off the chart. But talking about partnering, holding accountability, being accessible, and engaging and supportive were the terms used of education for all citizens. And I think the all citizens ties into what you're talking about. It sounds like that's a component of it. So what does education mean? What are we going to, a year from now, because a year from now you're going to evaluate whether or not we're making progress on this. And we're going to come back and say how we think we've made progress. What does success in the arena of education mean? Is it higher test scores? Is it more people graduating? Is it more people participating at all ages? Is it better civility? And what might that look like? What does it mean? Because we talk a lot about education. We talk about funding in education, and I promised I wasn't going to go much there, but education has an outcome. What is the outcome that we consider successful in education? Sir?
Yeah. For the last few weeks, something has been crossing my mind in regards to this entire region in higher education. They've done a great job of developing the ODU area. They've been working on it for years. Norfolk State still has a lot to do. But if you think about ODU, Norfolk State, Region, Hampton, William & Mary, Eastern Virginia Wesleyan, and Eastern Virginia Medical School. Suppose there was a concerted effort in this entire region to make higher education a priority. So people will come from all over the country to continue their education, whether it's at EVMS, whether it's something that Hampton had to offer, whether it's something that ODU and Norfolk State had to offer. What it would do, it would make corporations look at us, this region, a lot more specifically. And it also, we would be growing individuals. First of all of those students coming to this region for an education would certainly have to have an impact in terms of the money that they spend and their parents spend. And then afterwards, the number of persons who would stay here for jobs. And so I think it's really important for a regional cooperation for us to look at the universities and where they are and to see what could happen if all of these communities came together and said, well, let's do what we can do to make Hampton better, to make ODU better, Norfolk State better, EBMS, William & Mary. And just like in some parts of California, Silicon Valley, I mean, how did that happen? That didn't just happen. You know, you have a lot of great institutions there. And so from those great institutions, Silicon Valley evolved. And I'm just saying that we can't just look at where we are today. We have to look at the future. And I believe if we really put a lot of emphasis on our higher education and our institutions of higher education, it has to benefit this region 20, 30 years down the road.
Can I mean, I think Paul is so right. I mean, the thing that really matters in your economic development is how many college grads you have in your community. You know, people presuppose you have people getting out of high school, and you got to work at that. But what really matters as far as wealth is concerned is how many, you know, the state did that in Grow by Degrees. They did that study that said what really matters is how many college people with college degrees are in your community and advanced degrees. There was one thing we could do to move the pin, to move the needle. It is to get, in my opinion, heavily invested in the engineering departments at places like Old Dominion and Norfolk State, you know, and see what we could do to help them be more successful. The studies that were done nationally, you know, years ago about the cities that really succeeded, like your Austin and your San Jose and Seattle, in the 80s and 90s, hitched their wagons to these universities that were, you know, creating the Silicon Valleys that you talked about, the University of Washington with Microsoft, and places where a lot of, you know, really high-skilled jobs were taking places and being created because they had a high-skilled workforce there. And I think, you know, the notion that there is this complete link between economic development and education is, you know, is borne out time and time again. One other thing that's different about our community that maybe doesn't follow these patterns is that we got to pay attention to this. I mean, we are so heavily dependent upon the defense dollar here. Number one, I know we need to diversify our economy, and we have to work on that. Somebody's got some stats around here. Only 15, you know, no part of our sector outside of the defense dollar is larger than 15% of our economy. I've seen all that. But the thing that has gotten us through these tough years is the military spending. And how we focus, how the city, you talk about economic development, I mean, how you know, going with the flow, how do we become the best place, I think, in the world for the military to do business? You know, I mean, how do we, you know, we don't even have in the city of Norfolk a committee on veterans, and a veterans advisory committee, for instance. I've thought about that. I thought about it this past weekend. If we could create, I mean, we need to know what's important to these folks. I mean, you know, where they want to live, where they want to be. And that's another issue, but I mean, that's related. But I think Paul's right. This notion of trying to encourage our universities to expand here, to grow jobs here, to contribute to our tax base, but they really is to expand our economy. It's important.
And I think I agree with Paul and Paul. But I also think that who's telling our story? I mean, when you look at the state of Virginia, and when the governor goes out and lure companies and industry here, Northern Virginia has done a tremendous job in doing so. I mean, because that's where they're if they're selling Virginia, they're selling Northern Virginia. Who's selling us? Who's telling our story? Who's going out there and telling folk that we got these colleges that Paul just alluded to? We have a workforce here. What are we doing in our schools? So who's luring, where's the concerted effort from a regional standpoint, not just from the city standpoint, you know, in terms of luring these organizations to the city of Norfolk? What benefits are we offering companies for relocating here? What tax breaks are we offering them? What are we doing different than other municipalities are not doing? We have universities here. We have cutting edge technology here. So who's telling Austin? Who's going out there and marketing this city or this region and saying that we're open for business?
No question.
And I'll tell you that I'm very silent because we're letting Melanie facilitate, and we're listening.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, yeah, okay.
That's why these two guys are frantically taking notes, so we can come back and reflect back to each other.
When we talk about education and we talk about higher education, what are we doing in terms of education? Everybody pitches programs or different programs that are available to children who do well, to our rising stars, to our AB honor roll students. But what are we doing, or what are we encouraging our school board to do to catch the children who are underperforming? How do we get those children back into the loop? How can we catch them? How can we determine whether or not they have learning disabilities? So maybe they don't learn the same way as somebody else does. Doesn't mean that they're not smart. It just means that they're a little academically challenged, and we have to teach to them in a way that they understand, because they may be the next Bill Gates. But if we don't catch them, then they end up over in the jail somewhere because they got frustrated with the process and they dropped out of school. So what are we doing to catch those children who are your C and D students who have the potential, or how are we engaging them to keep them in school so that they can take advantage of opportunities that a community college may offer? If they're not going to a four-year university, they can take advantage of a community college, they can take advantage of a trade school, they can take advantage of some form of post-high school education other than that will give them an ability to earn a better living, other than just get your high school diploma and go and get a job. So that's one of the things that I think of.
So you're talking about the entire scope then?
Mm-hmm.
Our high performers, our low performers, or everybody? So a full access system.
Because all the children that are high performers, they know about all the scholarships and they know about all the activities, and they know that they can get maybe some college credits over at TCC early. Schools make sure that those kids know. But then there's a whole another bunch of kids that may not even have an incentive, because college in their mind may be out of their grasp. So they figure, why do I have to even work hard in high school? Doesn't matter because I can't go anyway. But maybe if they knew, then that would give them some incentive also.
Talked a bit about opportunities then for civility, opportunities for poverty, getting out of poverty, moving up, grabbing hold. I'm going to move a little
I
bit
was
different.
very keen on Minneapolis's priorities. I thought overall they really, for me, pretty much nailed the kinds of things I'd like to see us as a city think about. But I particularly liked what they talked about with education. It's not just a one buzzword, but one of the things that they do talk about is lifelong learning. And I really think that's something for us to think about as far as really encompassing everything we want. Our learning should not be K through 12. Our learning should not just be higher education. For us to succeed in so many areas, as a healthy community, I really think what we want to do is foster lifelong learning. And if you all haven't read Minneapolis' priorities, I'd ask you to take a chance to look at them, because I think they've really nailed some very important topics.
The one that we got on our thing.
Well, I got it on the, Melanie said it to us yesterday, and we have all of them.
It's
there. I mean, there are a number of them that have some great ideas, but I don't know.
Minneapolis developed.
Minneapolis has done a good job in
Vision
so many
2020.
areas. The arts, education, recreational opportunities, transportation. They're a little challenged on their weather, but they're working on it.
We do have that up. It's interesting. I mean, one thing just to
Yeah,
side
it
note.
does get warmer.
On a few of them, they did set timeframes. Let's see, 10-year and 3-year goal setting and things like that. And that's something we will definitely be exploring in the fall as part of the retreat.
Beltway, that's it.
This was one from before?
We're still on education.
Wherever,
That's
yes,
one last
absolutely.
question. You know, for me, I was reading that they're cutting back in our school system on, I think, auto mechanics and some of the classes that they're limiting this year. If resource, again, go back to that resources. If that's the issue, and I think that this is something that haunts us from a regional standpoint. When I look, and the mayor alluded to this, that we've grown our tax base, and so when you look around the region, I mean, there's a lot of development taking place from a regional standpoint. And I think at some point, we got to look at education from a regional standpoint. It would be great to be able to create a regional facility with the colleges involved that speaks to like a skill vocational school that that could hone the skills of these young people. Where if they college is not for everybody, but they could go to this particular setting where they can get a skill, take some community college courses, and from a regional standpoint, they can look at the opportunities that exist in the region and not just in one particular city. I think sometimes we're grounded by tunnels and water that, the opportunity might not be in Norfolk, but I live in Norfolk. So I could work in Virginia Beach or Portsmouth or Hampton, but I pay taxes in Norfolk. And so when we talk about creating opportunities, I just think that we got to begin to look a little broader in terms of the opportunities and begin to work with our neighbors a lot better and look at the shared resources and create opportunities. And I think educationally, I know that the Norfolk State and Old Dominion has a campus out in Virginia Beach, yeah, right. And so then there's no reason why collectively the cities couldn't get together and come up with a regional vocational school that kids could go to. And again, we will maximize that opportunity, but we can't continue to do business the way that we're doing. We got to define understand who lives here. Understand that college is not for everybody, but there are other opportunities for kids. We still need brick masons. We still need carpenters. We still need auto mechanics. We still need those types of jobs. So.
And I think too in the education, going back to the piece in our schools, in our public schools, there has to be a way to formulate a better partnership between the schools and the teachers and the parents. Because we can put programs in place, we can hire the best teachers, we can do all the things, we can increase teacher salaries, we can give resources, but if there's not a link between that teacher or that school and that parent, then to me it's like pouring water in a bucket with a hole in it. We've got to figure out a way to get the parents engaged or involved, more of them. It's like the PTA. Well, the PTA parents are great, but what about the other kids, who may not be doing so great or may have behavioral problems or may have, other issues? Those kids are important, and those parents are important because the parents may be staying away because they're at wit's end because they don't know what to do with their own kid. So, I think we have to find a way to engage better with the parents in this, in this effort of educating our kids.
Toward the end of this, and I apologize, it's in a little different order, we have regional partnerships, and I think we're going to have an interesting dialogue on that. If you'd like, we'll just go ahead and jump to that and then come back to public accountability. Regional partnerships. Talked quite a bit about a regional thought process. I did notice Dallas included in their education, the Dallas community and beyond. A lot of them are getting more and more into that. Most of the studies talk about parental involvement is linked directly to student achievement. But what is regional partnerships? If we want to parlay this, we're jumping ahead a little bit. We had 2 others, but that's good. This is, this is one where I have to confess, I don't know what city I snagged it from. The one on the bottom. You get going, you get excited about these things, and sometimes forget to cite your sources. But the beauty of government is I can't be accused of plagiarism. So, what is it we mean by regionalism? And if that's a focus area, what does that look like? Again, what is success in regionalism? We've talked about economic development. We've talked about education. We've talked about economic prosperity.
I mean, our success is, to me, our success in this city or any other city around it is regionally. We're, I mean, the mayor's fighting like crazy to try to, you know, tunnels and the Midtown Tunnel and the third crossing. That's regional. We all understand that our future depends on us being able to freely or be able to get back and forth across the water without the congestion that we're experiencing today, because we know that companies, that will be the determining factor. If they can't get goods and services in and out of here, then they're going to go somewhere where they can do that. And so, to me, regionalism is critical to the future of not just our city, but to the entire region. And you know, I just think that when we look at attracting businesses here, I'll say it again, you know, it doesn't bother me if a company goes to Chesapeake or Norfolk or Virginia Beach and they live in Norfolk, and we're getting taxes. People come to Norfolk, they shop. The more people we can attract to the region, the better off we're all going to be. I don't think the citizens see these lines sometimes how politicians see them. You know, people freely roam, you know, to various cities. It's all, we talk about communities, well, elevate that to the next level, and people go to places for a reason. They go, whether it be the town center, or whether it be downtown, or to certain things. They go to these places because these places have the types of amenities that they're looking for. People go to the theater, they come to us. They go to the baseball, they got to come to us. Hockey, they got to come to us. You know, because we hold that in the region. You know, so I think there's some things that we can do, position ourselves better going forward. But I think from a regional standpoint, our success is tied up in whatever we do regionally.
But, Anthony, I agree with you, but I also think that every city needs to have the exact same regionalism statement in their own, within their own framework, in their own city. Because if they don't have, I don't feel, and this is my belief, and I could be very wrong, but I don't think every city that you just mentioned believes in regionalism. I really, because we're all municipal corporations, and I think that perhaps, you know, Norfolk works better with other cities that may be like-minded, that may be in a similar situation, perhaps Portsmouth. But I don't think that in those cities that you've named, every one of them believes in regionalism. Frankly, I think that some of them wish the belief I get at times is that Newtown Road should just, you know, we need a passport to get across Newtown. And I got a problem with that. So if regionalism is really real, or we're going to just suck it up for everybody, then every one of the cities need to have the same regionalism moniker, same regionalism belief in their own mission statement. Because without that, then we're the ones carrying the banner. And I can tell you, we have one of those banners that's, you know, we're trying to get going for everybody, and it's out there right now. And until everybody jumps on, then I'll believe in regionalism. And until they believe in that, then I see that. But right now I see ourselves as being the leader of that, and I don't know if everybody believes it the way we do. I really don't. And I've got some big problems with it. You're right.
Yeah.
And then I got a couple here.
Yeah, regionalism is something we probably would never accomplished. We're about 7 deaths away from regional. But I do believe that regional cooperation is important. We've done it as far as our jail is concerned, regional jail. We try to very heartily with SIPSA, and we do it with HRT with our transportation. But some of the other opportunities that if we had regional cooperation, let's say for instance if Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, and Portsmouth we put together with Norfolk and made this great magnet school to bring in engineering and math, as as Paul mentioned a few minutes ago. Things that would be the first step beyond moving trash and jails and things of that nature. And it would help everybody's educational budget as well. One of the things that I think we'll recognize in the event we have a catastrophe, we work well as far as emergency preparedness is concerned. And I think the region is going to be working well with that. Law enforcement is something that should go across borders. Norfolk and Chesapeake do a great job around Berkeley Avenue Extended. Something can happen on the other side of Berkeley Avenue Extended that's in Chesapeake that Norfolk is going to help them with, and vice versa. So as far as education and law enforcement, these are some of the things that if we could really expand that and come together with your mayors and chairs group that you have and put that on the table, that would propel our regional cooperation a little bit more. I believe.
Because I've been thinking about this for, I can do 2 minutes, 10 minutes, I can, I chaired this, the governor's committee on regionalism at the statewide level that the governor put together here recently. The statement for the benefits of regionalism are, I think most people who've studied it out in the ocean believe that the unit of scale that matters in the global economy is the regional scale. And if you're going to compete in the global economy, your region needs to be able to present itself to the rest of the world in a unified fashion. The fact that you have 1,600,000 people here certainly speaks to the world a lot more efficiently than, or much more strongly than 243,000 people do. But what Andy is right and Paul's right. We compete. The region competes with Osaka, Japan, but much more so than Virginia competes with Tennessee. Or we compete with Charlotte, or the region of Charlotte, or Jacksonville. Regions compete. States don't really. The paradigm is broken. It's national governments, and then it's regional governments. It's the global economy. It's national governments, and it's regional governments. It's regional regions that matter in the economy.
Would you say that this region competes with Northern Virginia?
To some degree, but I also want to tell you that Virginia is hampered terribly in this effort, in my opinion, because of some very old public policy reasons. First of all, I think everybody would agree that 1,600,000 people working together have more influence in presenting themselves. Like, what is it that we can do? What is it collectively we do better than anyone else? What are the 4 or 5 things we can do that no one else does, or we do better, and how do we market those 4 or 5 things to the rest of the world so we attract, that share of the economy. The problem in Virginia is that regions, the General Assembly has kept most of the cities fractured and squabbling among themselves. For a long time, there was really, whether it was stated or not, the public policy of the Commonwealth was to have cities competing. There was an old notion that if they competed against each other, even though it wasn't, you can't find it in the General Assembly in the language, they would make for better government. If governments competed, just like in businesses competed, you'd be sharper. That's a failed notion. That's a bankrupt idea. The only thing that makes any difference right now is how well you cooperate with each other to move the region forward. In Virginia, though, we have this unique set of local government standards. We have this independent city status, which no other state in the country has. We're not part of an overarching board of county, a board that takes care of social services and the transportation initiatives and those types of things. There are no rules, there are no laws about annexation. was about 20 years ago, Charlotte was the same size as Norfolk just about, or Richmond. And what they grew their economy by annexing the county. A guy named David Rusk, called it elastic. Those economies were elastic, and they basically, he studied Virginia and said Virginia cities were doomed, they're inelastic, because we couldn't grow our boundaries. And the reason people grew their boundaries was to grow their economy by going out and getting wealthier parts, or more parts of the county that were more intensely developed. And so there were no annexation laws. They have this independent city status. The cities in Virginia are heavily dependent upon the real estate tax. We have higher local taxes and lower statewide taxes than most any other state in the country. And so the collector of the taxes, who was supposed to distribute them to make sure that people in Northern Virginia, their kids get educated as well as the people in Suffolk or Norfolk, since they don't share a lot of income with us, and local governments have to raise their own income, we fight like cats and dogs. And we don't have ways of creating, of sharing wealth. There are winners and losers in our economy. And when the Ford plant goes down, the real estate hit is Norfolk's. It's not everybody else's. And so there are some ways to change these rules, but as long as the General Assembly keeps us bottled up and squabbling with each other like this, we're going to have a tough road. We've risen above it on a number of occasions. All you got to do is ask yourself, and I don't want to sound too draconian here, but where are the great cities in Virginia? Why wasn't Richmond Charlotte? I mean, it's at the intersection of the two great interstate highways, just below, it was the state capital, just below D.C. How come Charlotte became, the regional, banking capital? Why wasn't Norfolk Baltimore? There are days ride up the bay. Usually around huge port communities, there are huge banking services as well. Why? What happened in Virginia that kept us all small and squabbling? And it's the General Assembly and Harry Byrd's notion of how he maintained control over the Commonwealth. So we've got a lot to do. We've come a lot. We're better than we used to be. And there are other ways to enforce, to make communities cooperate, and people looking at them hard. But and also this thing called the Dillon Rule, which makes it difficult for cities to do anything that would be entrepreneurial without going to the Commonwealth. That's a tough one on us too.
If we were to pull up Chesapeake's mission statement.
Very different than ours, Andy. You're exactly right. Other than, some of the generic stuff, what you said is we all got to share the same vision. Each of these communities in Hampton Roads is entitled to their own vision, they would tell you. We do not have a collective vision, and that's difficult for us.
Well, one of the things I would say is that, I had the privilege to represent you going to the Pentagon with the delegation, Mayor Sessom, Joe Frank from Newport News, Molly Ward from Hampton, that's about it from Chesapeake.
Colin Krasnoff from Chesapeake?
Yeah, but did he go with us?
There was somebody else from Chesapeake.
Somebody else from Chesapeake and Portsmouth. And, we went up there as a regional delegation to speak to the issues, the military issues that was happening with the jets in Langley and the aircraft carrier here and the jets in Virginia Beach. And, the Pentagon, we're about 4 or 5 meetings, and as we talking to these high-ranking officials, the one thing that stood out to all of us is that they said, I'm glad to see you're here as a delegation opposed to individual cities, because we've always approached things from an individual city opposed to a delegation or from a regional standpoint. And so I think that, and we had different parts and I spoke Virginia Beach, Joe Frank spoke we all spoke from different cities and just had the conversation with them, and I think it was well received. But what they took away from that is that, there is some element of regionalism. It shouldn't be when our back's against the wall, because we realize that, you know, if an aircraft carrier leaves Norfolk, it affects the region. If the F-35s leave Langley, that affects the region, you know. And so all of this, the jobs, where people shop, all of that affects us. Now, I know that the mayors meet, they got mayors and chairs.
How often do y'all meet?
From a,
We meet, the mayors and chairs on the south side meet 1 month, and then the next month, the mayors and chairs from the entire region.
Okay. I'm sorry.
But you know, I'm from that school where it's hard for me to do business with you if I don't know you. You know, and so we don't know each other other than what we read about each other during election time in the paper, what have you. But from a regional standpoint, we don't know the councils. You know, I mean, we know a few of them. I know more folks in Virginia Beach. But when was the last time we just had a conversation or a social where we got to meet and know each other, the ideology, or what folk are thinking, or what we don't do that. We haven't had those types of discussions, and so I just think that that's the big, that's the first step. You know, Paul, when he said that, I laughed, but I'm very serious. There are some folk a few folk that have held the region back. You know, make no mistakes about it. We're in competition with the other cities around us. We want to make sure that we keep our edge and we stay the center of the region. But I think there's some shared resources, but that's about knowing who you're working with at the end of the day. And I just don't think we've had those types of conversations. And we could benefit from that.
Can I ask a quick question? Is regionalism a priority unto itself, or is regionalism a tool to achieve other priorities?
I think it's a priority unto itself. I could be wrong, that's just my philosophy.
The conversation's gone both ways, so that's how I would put that to you.
And it's like, Mr. Rizzo, there are things that we do that are regional. Like you said, there are shared services, but then there are new initiatives that we need to embark on that are separate from that get us to that next level of regionalism. I mean, like I said, I mean, I think our relationship has strengthened since the mayor and Will have been able to work together. I mean, I think that's a very healthy relationship. That has not always been that way. You know?
I understood historically it was not until you and Will had not been strong.
I think that's true. The light rail situation is probably an example of, if we didn't have any relationships with the leadership at the beach years ago, light rail would be in Virginia Beach today. You know, 20 years ago when we started talking about light rail, the first design had the light rail coming from the oceanfront to Newtown Road to the naval base. The second spur was going to come downtown. I mean, getting to downtown Norfolk was not the original goal of the light rail. It just, we couldn't get, you know, the leadership at the beach then tied their decisions about light rail to lake gas to water and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, I agree.
I think it's a bit of both. I think it's a bit of both. I think you utilize the best parts of regionalism to get the things that you need, but then the things that don't work, you know, you put them aside and you work on them a little bit, but you don't let that desire or that goal of regionalism overshadow the other things that you're trying to do. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Shift gears just a little bit. Public accountability. We've talked a lot about a well-managed government. We've talked a lot about an efficient government. Does public accountability still apply as a priority? And if so, what does it mean? There's
Before we
against.
jump into public
I'm sorry.
something that was said earlier, about 10 years ago, the city of Norfolk paid to bring in a national expert on regionalism. And we had a luncheon at the Marriott, and we invited every member of the General Assembly in the region and every member of every city council in the region. I'm not sure if we got over to Newport News, and I'm not sure if we got to the peninsula. We probably did. We had a full house, and everybody, enjoyed. We made sure everybody sat at different tables. That Chesapeake didn't sit at its table, and everybody had to move around. The General Assembly guys, no one city tried to take the lead, and actually it was pretty productive. We tried to do it a second time, and just, it didn't. We tried to get another city to do it. It just didn't happen. But if you could rotate something like that, a luncheon like that every couple of months, you could probably, we could help ourselves. People wouldn't see Norfolk as the bully at times, or as Virginia Beach as the bad guy, or what this idea of getting to know each other is really relationships is very important, very important. So, and just the relationship that Mayor Sessoms has with the city, because he was married. His wife is the daughter of Roy Martin. And, just the relationship that he brings, because he likes the city of Norfolk, has helped tremendously in just what we do. I think, at least, he's supporting us tremendously on this Patriots Crossing. He's saying at least all the right things about light rail. He is, not in favor of expanding the Hampton Roads Bridge tunnel and trampling all over Willoughby. This is the first time somebody from Virginia Beach actually came out and said that stuff. So I told him I'm in favor of tolling the Lesnar Bridge. He didn't like that very much. Great to get some money for the new roads, but okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's great. It's a good discussion that needs to happen. And this may not be the way you want to go. The public accountability or efficiency, that's kind of...
We not want to go to accountability. To me, it's something we can do. It doesn't cost money. We can do it quickly. We can keep score on how we do it. We've been poor at it in the past. To me, this could be accomplished in 30 days. It starts at the top, comes all the way down.
It seems to be synonymous with well-managed government, really.
I would think so.
I don't know. If we move forward, I guess some things have happened politically to make you look at certain things. But all we have to do is look at our workforce and realize that we are right where we need to be as far as public accountability. This morning I was looking around the room at our Southside Task Force meeting, and I looked at the staff members that were there that represented Public Works, Park and Recreation, the city manager's office, and I looked at these individuals that have been coming to these task force meetings for this particular quarter of the year, and the energy that they bring. And even in spite of us not being able to give our workforce raises for the past 3 years, I really believe that we have a workforce that we can be proud of. And so just on the face of public accountability, I believe that it's there. Now, there have been some incidents to come along that became political that would make it look like that we don't have public accountability. But if public accountability begins with our workforce, then I think we have really a lot to be proud of, if that's where it begins.
You're right.
I guess I would put to you then, what is public accountability? I used examples here that take a little different turn. But what does it mean to you? Is it a workforce we're proud of?
Well, that's what it means to me. A portion of it, public accountability. Our citizens, when they call and they have an issue and they have a problem, and if our workforce is able to get out and relieve them of their problem or find a solution, or later on down the road find a solution, we are being accountable to our public. Now, when you get into the politics of things, and I forgot the phrase that they use, I can't even think of it, that they use it so much so to become a trite expression.
Transparency.
Transparency. But I really believe that when it comes to our workforce and the people that we have out in the fields and the way that they approach our citizens, that's the beginning, in my opinion, of public accountability.
So it's
Because
citizen
this is who
focused.
we depend on to take care of our citizens. And that's what we should be about, is taking care of our citizens.
So it is a citizen focus,
I
an
beg
employee,
pardon?
a citizen focus.
To me, yeah.
So,
It's employee driven.
Ms. Facilitator, I know this is a council discussion. May I just butt in for a second, please? I do agree that public accountability is the foundation, and I truly believe that you will hold me accountable, because I'm going to have a well-managed administration for you. We're going to be customer service oriented. We're going to be efficient. We're going to be effective. We're going to be accountable. We're going to be inclusive. So to me, this is a slam dunk, and even if it doesn't end up in your priorities, it's the foundation of what we do in administration.
Marcus, I think it's a cultural thing, I heard somebody say culture eats strategy for breakfast every morning. You can have great plans, but if you don't have culture, people who do what is right and do it, it becomes part of their lives. You've got to create the culture within city government to do the right thing. I still keep coming back. That day that I stood at my office window, we had you weren't here then. We had an office worker. We had a guy work for us in Public Works. We had a storm in downtown. And I'm not even sure he was working that day. He waded out into City Hall and Bush with a broom in water that was nearly waist deep that nobody told him what to do. He stood there with a broom trying to keep a drain open so the water would drain as it was coming down. Nobody told that guy what to do. That was a cultural. He just picked up the broom and went to work. He helped a couple ladies who were who were getting drenched across the street. We had a city worker. We brought him up here that day. About a month later. But that was, you gotta have that's got to be a cultural thing within. You've got to work on it from the start to the top. It goes all the way through the bottom there, about doing the right thing and about giving us a day's work for it. For a day's wages, and being committed to improving this city.
But we still, I agree 95% of our workforce, but we still not returning phone calls at times demanded. We're still not responding to resumes or requests for employment. I can't tell you how many people have had, not lately, and I sent in a resume, I've never heard anything. They never even said, we're not hiring. People that, they said they were going to fix my sidewalk on such and such, so I stayed home from work and they didn't come and they didn't call me and said they weren't coming. And that's, there are our customers, and we have to treat them as our customers. They're paying the bills, and when we have 7 or 8 or 9 people on a crew, we need to look at the efficiencies of the people that are out in the public eye. And I know we're in the task force and these people are with us. We've got great people, but when you got 8 or 9 people, 4 or 5 trucks, and 1 in the hole looking, digging, and 2 looking, and 1 sitting on the backhoe, and 2 more walking around. We got to. Maybe that was a certain situation that we needed, but we need to. I just think we need to operate like a private business where we get out, we're out doing public work, land, whatever we're doing. I get a call a week. You got to come over here and look at this. There's 8 guys and 2 trees and a backhoe. I think we can operate more efficiently. I'm not. They're doing what they're told and they're being dispatched as they're told. I'm not sure we're doing it efficiently as we should. I know we're not returning phone calls in some cases in a timely manner, or responding to inquiries or resumes or whatever. If somebody calls, we need to respond to them. I need to tell them we can't help you, I'm very sorry, go to hell, whatever it is. But we need to respond. Not calling back is not appropriate in my mind. Not responding to an email is not appropriate. And we've got. And I will say, we have had a culture of not doing that. And it started at the top and it filters down. And I don't know why everybody in our city government couldn't return a phone call before they go home at night. They do it in my company. You don't go home until you return a phone call. You might not be able to have to get back to you. Or we say we're going to do something and can't do it. Call up and say, I can't get there to do what I said I was going to do, but we'll be there in 2 weeks. People understand. Communication to me is the key. And you can't always tell people what they want to hear, but you can respond to us. And I think we can max it that. And some, and many people are very responsive. It's not a blanket on everybody. I think that's got to be driven in, that we have to be responsive. We have to do what we say when we're going to say we're going to do it, or else call up and say we can't. I think,
wanted to jump on to what he's saying about communication, and I believe as governments are evolving and developing, that we should actually, the accountability needs to be mutual, that if we go out and educate the citizens about how government operates, then there would be less reliance, in a sense, on what we're doing. Those phone calls that aren't being returned or emails aren't being returned are sometimes some of the most outrageous requests because citizens don't understand maybe how government operates. I have a constituent that's contacted Senator Northam's office asking for requests about things that are city related. And this same constituent has been contacting me, and I've tried to educate her on there's certain things we can't do.
definitely.
And somewhere in public accountability should be a plan to educate the citizens more of how government operates, what their role is as part of the government. I look at the Neighbors Building Neighborhoods program. We're in tight economic times, but even without that, even if we had money, people should be taking ownership of their community. And we need to be telling them they have more power and more voice sometimes than we do. They can influence what's happening in their community more than we can. And we get outrageous requests. I'm the newbie, so I'm learning, and I know Andy and Angela probably the same thing. You get all these requests from citizens. They want you to, make the sun go, rise and set at times that it can't. But when you talk to them and you let them know about this is how you could do this next time, that you could call this number or you could call this department, they're like, oh, I didn't know that. These are people that are not engaged in civic leagues. We're educating them. We've relied a lot on educating through civic leagues. How are we getting to the people that are not engaged and involved in the government? I think that's where public accountability is. And we saw with this budget cycle that there was less criticism of how our budget was being operated because we included people, but not just included them, but they were educated about how the budget process works. You did that, Marcus. You brought your staff and you educated the public on how it works, so there was less criticism. That's where the conspiracy theories come from, the transparency issues. That's when people start questioning our government, is when they don't feel like they're involved or they don't understand how our government works and operates. They don't know that we're a Dillon rule state. They don't understand that we can't just come in and tear down apartments anymore because the law changed.
Right.
And when I tell people that, I didn't know that, so I always tell them to contact their delegate, and ask them to change the laws, because really we have to wait for them to tell us that. So somewhere in that public accountability, we need to have educating the public on how our government works and operates.
I think the public accountability piece starts with the council and the management. It's like going into a store and having someone in customer service be rude to you, and you ask to speak to the manager, and the manager comes in and they're more rude than the person who's working with them, and you just kind of figure, okay, well, I know where they got that attitude from because the manager was rude and all the other people are rude. I haven't had the benefit of working under or working with different administrations, but I think there is a tremendous amount of energy that you bring to the city, and I believe that that energy is like a domino effect throughout the city. And so by opening up our meetings, televising our meetings, putting information out, getting out and working in our community forums and in the public input sessions, that has gone a long way in restoring the public trust. And you can't fix something overnight because it didn't break overnight or it didn't get off the track overnight. So the fact that we believe in you and the fact that I believe the majority of our city employees believe in you and believe when you say, you know, our city's gonna be well managed, our city's gonna be data driven, whatever we do, there's going to be a reason for it. If we don't do it well, we're not going to do it at all. Those are things that people can relate to and grasp, because when they go to work on their jobs, they have to be accountable to someone, and they hate seeing city employees who are just loosey-goosey and do whatever it is that they want, and they hate seeing, you know, stories in the newspaper about this having gone wrong and that having gone wrong. I believe that we're on the right track to having our city become well managed and well run. Like I said, it's not something that can happen overnight, but I believe that we're on the right track, because one of the things that bothers me, having been a city employee, is when something goes wrong in the city and it's on the front page of the newspaper above the fold and it's the first thing that you see. Every single city employee is affected by it. It doesn't have to be their department. It doesn't have to have anything to do with anything that they've done. But every single city employee is affected by it, and it affects their morale. So once we become a well-managed government, and once we become completely data-driven, and once we get all those things cleaned up, and we eliminate or at least minimize the negative stories that are able to be produced out by the pilot, then you know, in addition to all the things that we're doing now, I think that the public will have a much favorable opinion of the city of Norfolk, because even in my opinion affects our development efforts. It affects our housing efforts. I mean, when you pick up the paper every day and all you see is what's going wrong with Norfolk, who wants to move here? Who wants to send their kids to school here? So I think the public accountability piece has, you know, it has a lot to do with framing not only what we do, but how other people see us.
By the way, a lot of people want to move here. Don't let the anecdotal stuff. Census figures say we grew by 3.6% this year over the last 10 years. Virginia Beach grew by 3%.
I'm selling them houses here, man.
So I mean, you know, stick to the facts is what I tell people in civic leagues. I mean, we grew faster than Virginia Beach. We're going to overtake them any day now.
They're all in my ward.
Yeah, they're all, yeah. That's good though, but I mean, that happens in every community that has military in it, all the way across the country. The rules are the same and they're applied equally. And so they've hurt us before. This time they helped us. Marcus, where does the strategy thing, I mean, where we sort of plot our course, where does that come in? I mean, I understand all of this, but how do you write the strategies that would implement?
Yeah, if you look at, I think one of the good examples is in your second sheet, it's actually Richmond's example.
Charlotte has a city strategy.
Right.
Too.
And we had a great conversation yesterday about this. And good. So the question is, if we go through this whole process, is somebody going to say, wait a second, what's our strategic plan? And we say, wait a second, this is it. We didn't want this to be something that's connected to the budget, and we call it performance-based budgeting. Literally, even when Frank has the general plan and his priorities, they're locking into what you decide today. Everything we do from this point on in this administration is going to be driven by what the priorities are of the city. So if there is, and I'm not saying there's a glossy document, but when it's all said and done, we're going to have a plan much like what you have here. And everything that we do will be driven by what the priorities of the city are. Now I'll tell you, I use the Richmond example because this was a part of what I did when I was there. A lot of people didn't think it could happen on such a short period of time, but literally they've changed the way that they budget, and we want to do the same thing. We want to make sure at some point, and we're going to talk about public safety next, but if we think public safety is just related to police, I think we've missed an opportunity, because it's also the perception of safety. So we're talking about even graffiti. So, Mayor, to answer your question, this is really the starting point of something that, at a bare minimum, over the next 18 months, we're going to develop everything that we do. It's going to be related to what happens today, even the master plan for parks and recreation. We won't stop everything we're doing.
What about transportation? Where does that, and I know you said that in the very beginning, people are writing books that are saying, look, transportation is destiny. If you're not built around the transportation, if your community's doesn't include transportation centers that connects you to China's building cities around airports, for instance. Right. I mean, where transportation, so how do we make sure that transportation and ability for people and goods to get in and out of here is worked into all of this? I mean, we can have well-educated workforces, but education is destiny too, but transportation is destiny, is what they say.
We know this is, this collaborative process. We would be very surprised if transportation is not one of our priorities or built into one of the priorities before we leave here today. So that, again, we started with something that happened in the mid-1990s. And today we're saying these are the 6 that you have, but even if you look at the back of the presentation, we gave you examples of, we call it, different ways of looking at mobility. Yeah, so that, what exactly, so Melanie's going to say, what does that mean to you? But right now, it's not very clear. And I think Councilman Prozero said it very early on, what do these 6 things mean? So we're going to move from these 6 or these 7 or these 5, and we're going to give you a statement for each one, what it means, so that when we go about doing the business of the city, we understand what education means or mobility means to this council so that we can implement.
Tommy, did you hit it?
I just wanted to ask, you put a timeline of 18 months, but I was under the impression your budget next year was going to reflect the council priorities. So is that just going to be part of the rolling out of this, or so is next year's budget book going to be divided into the council priorities, or is it going to look the same?
Here, all my,
I was looking at your timeline.
Sure. Yeah, all my staff would say it's 18 months, but I will tell you will not have the same budget book this year that you'll have next year. I know there's a lot of rumbling over there, but we can't tell you one thing and do something very different. So in a perfect sense, one would suggest this is a 2 to 3 year process, but I'm convinced that over the short term that we've made so much progress in terms of setting a culture that we can at least change the way that we display information to you so it's more core services as opposed to line items in the budget.
To clarify, Marcus and I argue frequently over the fact that it takes a year to create the process. It takes 3 to institutionalize it. And part of that's the distinction of saying, building the culture, building the process. We want to create and maintain an organization that thinks in terms of everything it does is feeding the priorities set by the council, is implementing them, is taking them forward. So that's part of, you're not locked into a single thing on here. And that's why we wanted you to talk, is to tell us what is it you really want to see happen. It's a lot harder though if we just gave you a blank slate and said, what do you want? It'd be a long week. Whereas trying to just kind of get to what's the meat? What have we heard a lot? I put these up here. We'll come back to them in just a minute. But some of the other things that we saw frequently with other cities were environment, sustainability, livability, mobility, lots of ilities, healthy communities, because those are things that incorporate a lot of what you've said. So if we go back real quickly, though, just to public safety, that's currently on the books, is something that this community has said is a priority. It's a nice word, but it could mean a lot of things. Some of the examples, Rock Hills is very broad. They talk about police and fire incidents, but they also talk about life, health, property. The other one, where people feel safe and secure, where they live, work, and play. What does public safety mean to this council, or is it even something that we feel the need to state as a priority? Not every city has it as a priority.
Well, it almost seems a given.
Yeah. It's a mandated service.
Right.
But
So, and I don't know if, when I'm thinking of this, I'm thinking more outside the box perhaps. And since that's such a core issue in any city, am I thinking, is it almost too basic?
Is it part of
Or is it
community?
circumvented, or is it pulled in other category? I mean, I haven't seen, we've talked about, I haven't seen fun yet. Frankly, but that's what makes people want to live here. And
Livability?
Livability, yes, or at some point get to that, but I don't know if public safety really is. It's almost,
It's a
almost,
given.
it's almost setting up warning flags that we have it as you put it up there, and it becomes, why do they have to have public safety as the top 4 or 5 things in their city? It's, what's wrong?
Well, is that something that the group talked about?
I'm just philosophically speaking about this. I'm not necessarily adopting the position.
Not everybody. You'll notice not all of these have public safety as identified as a process
Andy, I think
or
if
as a
we-
priority.
If we move to a place where in our communities, as Barkley put it, people live where they want to live regardless of economics, as I put it, we take away the concentrated areas of poverty, and we have people diverse who are spread out throughout the city. Because when you have high concentrations of poverty and you have some poverty levels that are really high in some areas, you have more crime. And I venture to say that maybe those people who live in those areas may not feel safe, not that they're bad people, but they have to live in a certain place because of whatever the reason is. So if we can do away with the high areas of concentrated poverty, then we spread people out and we diversify the city, then I think public safety does become a non-issue. And not a non-issue, but not necessarily a priority, because, I mean, I live in my neighborhood, and I grew up in Ingleside. We never had crime on our street. Nobody's car ever got broken into. Nobody's house ever got broken into. It was a great place to live. In some cases, if you look at crime stats around the neighborhood, sometimes they're great, sometimes they're not. And my question is, where's all this crime happening? Because that doesn't happen on the street I grew up on, it doesn't happen on the street I live in now. But if people are spread out, then I think that the public safety people will, when it comes to feeling safe where they work and where they live and where they play and have fun, I think you'll have that and it'll be less of an issue. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's just...
You've talked a lot about community. You've talked a lot about neighborhoods. Perhaps for Norfolk, public safety is simply an extension, a tool. Like we talked about regionalism. Is regionalism a priority unto itself, or is it a means to an end? In this case, public safety may be the means to the end rather than the priority itself.
I want to play real quickly. I happen to really like our slogan, Life Celebrated Daily. I know some people have wanted to get rid of it, but I like it because if you think about using it when it comes to our priorities, you can separate it and you have life, you have celebration, which Andy was talking about, and you have the daily stuff, the day-to-day things. And you take the day-to-day management stuff of the city and you put it under that word. You have the celebration stuff, and you put it under there that are related to this. And you have the life, the stuff that we have to have as part of our life, the communities and things. And you play off those 3 words and build our priorities around those 3 words if we're planning on keeping Life Celebrated Daily. Bob's shaking his head. But I think that those 3 words kind of could help shape where we're going. And we just have to find which place they go under. If community it's about celebration, then we put community under the celebration part of the city, and then we build from there. Anyway, I was looking at our words, and I wanted to make sure that when you said celebration, it made me think about what you said about people. Are they happy to live in Norfolk? Are they proud of Norfolk? And that's a piece that we need to address. And make sure that it's constantly there. I love living here. I don't plan on ever moving. I want to stay here the rest of my life, but I have some friends who don't feel that way. So what do we need to do to get them to stay here, to raise their kids, to do the life stuff? How's the day-to-day operations of the city affected, and what are we doing to celebrate to make them stay here?
Whether you make it a priority or not, we have to make sure that people feel safe doing where they live, work, play. I You might not want to flash it on a billboard, but it's a damn important part of this city, I think. You know, I don't see any city that not have that unless there's some utopian society. But I mean, it's got to be the safety net has got to be you can take a walk in your neighborhood and not worry about it. And I think it is a priority if we want to downplay it.
That's the
Every
part
survey we have
community
ever done, every survey we've ever done, it's either public safety or education pops up one or two, what's important to people, so.
Absolutely.
But it seems like we're all saying the same thing. We're all just going round and round on the same ideas. The idea is that you want to make Norfolk a place people want to live. And to get people to want to live here, you're talking about safety, you're talking about education, you're talking about able to have adequate transportation, you're talking about housing, so, I mean, I think we're all trying to do the exact same thing. We're talking about having fun, we're talking about recreating. All of those things are what people want to do when they live in an area. So, however you want to slice it. And very frankly, I think there's some really good ways here that other folks have done this. So, I don't know. I realize all the these billboards are fun. Billboards, that's what I said.
Is the mic on closer to her?
Really, aren't we all just saying the same thing? How many times
Well, to
do you
your
want to
point,
repeat this?
Dr. Whibley, I just flipped through
The only
something.
thing I'm going to add, and I don't know if you're getting to this, is if you looked at where we were, 12 years ago, and this reflects just our environment, but we haven't talked here about the environment as a priority. And I would say that if you're going to put an umbrella about where you want to, bringing people to stay in Norfolk, you got to include the environment as a priority.
Well, and
Sustainability, however you want to slice it, whatever you want to use. But I do think that's a priority that we haven't demonstrated 12 years ago that now we need to accept.
Well, and that's what the mayor was saying, there's no great city in Virginia, but how about Norfolk become the environmental city on the East Coast? And we have so much opportunity economic development-wise with being on the water to really take Norfolk. We should be building the windmills that Virginia Beach might end up putting out there, but we could be a model city for the East Coast on the environment. And it's not talked about or addressed as much. And our industry could be around the environment. We could be doing workforce development, training future employees on environmental. That's where the biggest business is right now.
Well, I don't think, but also we've already got the groundwork laid for culture and the arts already here.
Sure.
And that
That's part
should
of
be involved in that. I mean,
That's the fun part.
that goes under fun. The culture and arts have to be considered. Public art, private art need to be considered under that.
I've heard a couple things that sounds like you want to add into this mix. Culture and the arts,
Yes.
fun,
Right.
basically fun. The environment, you talked about civility, and that could be related to environment, safety, education, community. Military relationships came up.
I think fun is overrated.
No experience myself.
Change it to recreation.
Melanie, can
We got
I guess based on that too, a couple of things. It seems that we've heard mobility, transportation mobility, the environment, and even cultural arts as priority-worthy initiatives, as well as the concept of public safety. And public safety, I just flipped through some of the pages. Some of the other localities call it safe community, health and safety, community safety, even livability. So I guess the question is, at some point, we have your ideas, your concepts, and if you trust us to go back and be able to take these and get them down to maybe that 5 to 7 range, but not losing sight of anything that was brought up today, maybe even in the priority statement. I just think this has, in my opinion, been extremely successful, and I just don't want to get us to a point where we are going around and around and around. But unless I've missed something, it seems like there is the want or the willingness of the expectation that mobility, transportation folded in, environment, and cultural arts be somewhere captured in what we come back to you with.
You have healthy community in this.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, I know that's my bias.
We're having
A healthy community is one where people are recreating, they've got a healthy environment.
Definition of what do you
Rick,
mean
that's
when you
Big Mac.
public safety?
I don't.
The question was actually, the question really is,
What do you
Recreating
want
as
in
is-
public safety? And some of the comments that came back were, is public safety really the priority, or is public safety part of creating the community we want to be in? So that's where a lot of the dialogue has been about whether or not public safety is a priority unto itself, or really a part and parcel of being the Norfolk we want it to be under another umbrella. A health and safety community, a healthy and safe community, a livable community, a quality community. Those terms have been thrown out a lot. And so it actually sounds a little more toward the encompassing it under another area rather than highlighting it as an independent priority.
What would you provide? So you're asking us, what does that mean to us?
Well,
Public safety?
we start out with the idea of what does it mean to you if it's an independent priority. What I heard back from the majority of the group really was public safety is a given. We need a safe community. We need people to feel safe, and it's part of the higher priority of being a community where people want to live. And then we got into the conversation about what is that community, what is the desired community, and that's where the fun is, where the transportation you can get around is, the healthy components, and the other things that we've talked about. So it really sounds like the group feels pretty comfortable with safety is merely a component of the community aspect, the desirable community. For some, not for everybody. But
What does that mean? Does that mean we're, at some point we'll get down to nuts and bolts of,
yes.
but not just a statement, but, you know, some of the issues that are prevalent in some of these problematic communities
Yes.
that would, you know, go speak to and speak to the word itself, public safety. For example, in some fragile neighborhoods, we've had problems with stores or drug houses or, you know, young men out there selling drugs or gangs or what have you. And so, in some instances, it has taken us years to close down problematic situations within the community. So from a public safety standpoint, if I'm living next door to that, and my quality of life is interrupted, okay, but I've reached out to you and it takes me a year to get it done, that diminishes my quality of life. So I'm saying to you, from a public safety standpoint, strategically, what is the strategy to be able to mitigate some of these problems that we see in certain communities? Because the problems that exist in one community might not be the problem that exists in another community. One community may simply need bike patrol. Another community may need right, but if you're going to talk about public, we're talking about public safety.
I understand.
So what does that mean? I want to drill it down to, I understand what I'm getting.
I think if we try to drill too far down.
No, I got to drill down because I got to understand the
Drill
community.
away. Drill baby, drill.
What the symptoms of the problems that may exist in one community.
I know that.
To me, it gets down to CompStat in terms of looking at a board and looking at
There's no question
the
that
number
you have
of.
to tailor your public safety. I don't think, but I don't.
Here's,
You can't talk about quality of life if you can't deal with the issues here.
I know that.
What may be a quality of life in one community may be hell in another community. So all I'm simply trying to do is get to a point where we look at the city, whether you use CompStat or whatever, when you look at the city holistically, that you're able to pinpoint and you come up with strategies, not to just police, but to have a strategy to end those problems. Every year, we shouldn't continue to see the same problems over and over again. We don't have a strategy or an end game when we go in there. Because if you're going to be a well-managed government, then that means, and you're looking at data, then you're going to come up with results. You're going to have results at the end of that data. So if I'm going into a community and the same situations that exist today exist 5 years from now, I've been unsuccessful. So who do I go to and say, look, we've been unsuccessful in this? So we can't just police the way we've been policing where there's a problem and send the bike patrol in there, send the narcotic folk in there. At the end of the day, there's a whole new group of folk that come up, take their place, and we're dealing with the same symptoms and the same situations year in and year out. I want a strategic plan and understand the strategic plan of how we're going to police, how we're going to combat these issues. And at the end of the day, if I look at it 2-3 years from now, that problem doesn't exist anymore. Because we put the core services in place, and we had a plan when we went in. We just didn't put a Band-Aid on it. And so that means that at some point, that community will begin to have some form of quality of life.
You're exactly right. We start with the data.
Right.
Period. And we start with the data, and then from that point, we begin with the end in mind and what is going to be the desired outcome for that community. And you're right. It is not one size fits all.
Right. So I just want to make sure we talk public safety, that is a part of the conversation as we drill down and understand what I'm saying. Well, you come back with a couple of statements and say, well, public safety is important. Yeah, but what does that mean? And what does that look like?
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
We'll bring these back. It
Thank you,
sounds
Mr.
like
Wynn.
quality of
Fans only 2 hours.
Okay, we got a couple other things to get out on the table here before we break. Mr. Wynn, and then we're going to come to Andy. So.
I would like to bring up the manager. We've had a number of discussions about the Little League and where you and Darrell and where we are conceptually. I know we hadn't tied down anything, but I do have some representatives here. And, we've got 800 young people that are being displaced, in case anybody doesn't know that, from the police park. And we need to find a place to play fast. So, with that, if you...
Sure. Councilman Nguyen, I believe the last time we met, this came to my attention, and I said that when we got back together, we'd give you a progress update. What I will say is that whatever we do, it's going to, and we're in the process. I've been meeting with Darrell and his folks, as well as some outreach efforts. But the bottom line is this: whatever we do in the short term is going to have to be a collaborative effort. And what I mean by that is we have at least 5 what I call leagues out there, having 5 different areas where they're playing. And because of our limitations with fields, it's going to be very important that there's some collaborative effort. In other words, we have fields in which the Azalea Little League play on, and we have fields that the Ocean View Little League plays on. And at some point, all of those fields are going to have to come into play for us to be successful in the short term, as well as the collaborative effort between those individuals who have their children playing. So that's where we are right now. And again, I would even throw in the fields in which we have our own programs, the RBI program. So there are some things we can do in terms of getting fields up, I guess, better prepared. But I will tell you that we will not be successful unless the different groups are willing to also collaborate, and that's going to be the key. And I think that this meeting today really pinpoints how you can get things done with collaboration.
And we chatted earlier in the week, and we're going to chat again. We need to sit down with Darrell and the representatives of the different leagues and facilitate. For instance, in some places, there's room to build 5 fields. You could have 2 separate leagues, or you could have a league like Ocean View. And I talked to Jim, and that wasn't very, the first pass wasn't really. But we could go to Ocean View Elementary, and that entails school board, not tearing down schools and moving in another. And one of the options would be to build 5 fields. I think you said 7 fields would fit there. There are 2 now, and they didn't want to play together, they could play separately and have their own leagues, or same maybe in Azalea, same maybe in some other place. I think the key is that the core group, as I explained to you, of the Little League, naval-based Little League or Fleet Park or whatever, I call it naval-based, stay together, and we don't want, you know, the T-ball over here and the coach pitch over here and the majors over here or whatever. I think there are solutions to that. One of them, I didn't realize that we owned Azalea. Paul told me there might be some question, but we do own the Azalea, and there are how many fields out there?
We have 7.
Seven.
You were saying something else, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, sir?
Is it 7 and those are our fields over there?
Yes, those are our fields.
We're talking about,
Where
where?
did you tell?
No, sir, you're not able to, there's wetlands areas there surrounding that.
And then, so there's the potential of splitting or sharing, keeping the league separate, keeping the leagues together. I think we need to get with the Little League, Naval League, Little League people. Darryl, yourself, I'm happy to be involved, whoever, and maybe the people that run the other leagues, and do it fast and try to understand, you know, if they want to stay separate, if they want to be together, or whatever. If we're going to have a facility that the naval base can stay together and have their own little place, or if they decide it'd be better to have 9 fields and a bigger league, I don't know, but can we facilitate that meeting sooner rather than later? There's a lot of angst. A lot has been, you know, we've had numerous meetings, the mayor and I have, different Little League representatives. We've had admirals and captains, congressmen, senators, representatives. You know, we've got, you know, and a lot of numbers thrown around about what it costs to build a field and whatever. So when can we get together?
We can do that this week.
Across the table.
Sure, we can do it this week, Councilman. The key is, our goal is to have baseball being played next season. I mean, the continuation, no stop.
We need it to be, the league need to hang together.
That's exactly right. It
And
won't
have
happen
mama
without
go
that.
over here with her T-ball kid and over here with her 9-year-old and what have you.
Could you tell me where Little Leagues play right now?
Yes, ma'am. They play at Tarleton, Fleet Park, and Azalea.
And Ocean
School,
View.
Ocean View.
And Ocean View, okay, and then Tarleton is our park,
Yes,
am I
ma'am, it
right?
is.
Okay,
We own all the facilities except Fleet Park, which
Okay.
we're being evicted.
and then the baseball that's played at Lakewood is rec league, that's, and at Northside, then that is adult league, rec league, is that?
North side is a combination of adult softball, we have
It's all
school
softball.
softball, and it's a combination of traveling teams as well. But at Lakewood, that's actually a private school that plays baseball games there.
When is American Legion or?
Yes, and American Legion plays at Lakewood as well, sir.
At the summer league, right?
Mhm.
So they don't play softball there anymore?
No, not that much. Well, yes, the adult league does, but not youth.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, so there's an adult league.
Playing that back to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why
North
would
side,
they
right.
look at Lake Taylor got about 4 or 5 fields over there?
I'm deferring to Darryl and
I mean, I mean, some of us have been approached by people, but I mean, you know, I mean,
is there room?
I-
I mean,
I-
I think any option is open as long as we keep the league together in a reasonable neighborhood.
I'm just, I mean, unless there's a conflict where, you know, when do they play? What time?
They play all during the week from what, April through June, and then they have a fall league.
When we, when the last time that Fleet Park was an issue before us, did we have a financial investment or just a zoning? You know, we didn't let Shello Grove, the old Shello Grove front lot, that somebody wanted to put a strip mall there. I think it might have been y'all.
Yeah, hold on a second.
They make those
It's at Fleet Park, 20 years ago, something like that, the city invested $400,000 but it was a partnership. The Navy owned the property. Access to it was down a railroad right of way. The city, and plus the community, we raised a lot of money, $400,000 paid for a share of it. There was a lot of community fundraising. Some light poles came from Old Met Park, as well as some stands, and you know, Steve Ballard and a lot of guys just pitched in and tried to build the thing along with Dennis, and some of us raised money and, you know, and pushed.
So what would happen in this particular effort? Same thing?
Yeah, oh, sure. I mean, we don't have a plan yet, but I would think it would involve
That's why we've
widespread
got to move
community.
and get our
We
plan.
just can't, we've got to get a location. One thing, the other piece that we need to work on from a long-term point of view is that there is Navy property, which is a substantial piece of Navy property, which the Navy is looking at some environmental concerns about it, which, you know, hopefully, I mean, if approached in the right way, this could be made available to the city for recreation uses. It's a big piece of property, you know, but, you know, we're probably talking a couple of years out by the time we can actually get to that point. But so, I mean, I think someday that will happen.
Where is that?
It's out there across from Camp Allen.
I was gonna say, because I remember my son used to practice back there behind Camp Allen, big fun.
That's the type facility that you would have softball, little league, and lacrosse, and this type of facility would really be economic development tool to bring in 100 soccer teams.
It's over 50 acres out there.
Like they have in York County, or James City County, Virginia Beach, or Chester. But as you say, we need to bring this thing to a head quickly.
That's the long term.
Yeah, well now, a couple of things as far as the park is concerned. You said it's about 700 ball players?
800.
800 ball players, something like that, okay.
600, excuse me, 600.
Yeah, I've seen about. I met with a group up at the campus landfill, and I don't think they were interested in coming out of their comfort zone in terms of, but that's 55 acres. And
Is it really?
it's 55 acres, and it could be really developed into a complex that you could have baseball, people coming, playing regional tournaments, you know, whenever other leagues are not playing. And just like we have the different football complexes we have in high school. And, you know, I just really believe that if we do something to help Fleet Park find a location, that they would, we would ask them to go to the, whoever their governing body is, to expand the district.
I think
Right
we
now-
probably have to do that no matter, we have to
Yeah.
get some kind of permission no matter what we do.
Yeah, they have a governing body, and that we'd ask them, that I believe that we should have to ask them to go to expand the districts, because right now, Campbellstown and Berkeley are the only two communities beyond the west side. And so if we could put a couple other communities, you know, to expand it. People are playing baseball now. My son's been playing Fleet Park ever since coach pitch. And I think he's in his next to last year playing, and it's a great organization. It's really a tight ship, and I support it, but I'd like to see some expansion of it. Some people had mentioned Lafayette Park. I don't think that would do well, because with what we put in the money for the zoo,
Yeah.
and with the possibility of the zoo continuing to expand, that wouldn't work. Barrard Park is underutilized. That does have room for growth over in Barrard Park, in terms of some other lots that, you know, could be available. And I think we spent, how much money did they spend on the field of Barrard Park? It was
Nice field.
It was
You talking
federal
about
money.
RBI?
RBI, it was federal
That was,
money, I believe.
yeah.
Field of Dreams,
Yeah,
right?
Field of Dreams.
Yeah,
But,
So-
yeah, but the issues there are parking, and then there's a master plan to renovate that park, so.
but I think when we were talking a few minutes ago about regional cooperation, even if we don't do anything with campus or landfill as far as baseball is concerned, Chesapeake and Norfolk really should look at that landfill, because it's 55 acres. I don't know if any of you have been up there recently, but you need to go and take a look at it. You can see the entire city of Norfolk. When we were there, we had Public Works Director there, John Kuiper, and some other engineers. We won't be able to be extremely intrusive as far as the land is concerned, as far as digging down and things like that. But that is an ideal place for a complex. But as I said, the West Side Barclays guys didn't want to come out of their comfort zone. And
It's
so,
been a while since you jumped in.
yeah, so.
Welcome back, buddy.
But I tell you, it is an ideal location for us to consider. Yeah.
So where are we looking?
So we're gonna,
Short term.
Short term.
Yeah, short term, we're gonna
I
get.
didn't know it was
So short term, we're looking at Bales Park.
Oh, Lordy, my friend's ready to find out.
We could get rid of those 200.
You know, another sensitive issue, but it has been mentioned, is looking at our golf courses. And do we need 3 golf courses in Norfolk, and how much land that takes up? And is there potential with one of those?
What are you talking about?
You wanted to bring up Bales Park, I had to bring up golf.
Who's next?
All right,
That's the craziest
let's
thing I've
ask you,
ever
which
heard.
one would you close?
well, I would like to see data anyway on how much money our golf courses bring in, so.
Oh,
It's down right now because of the
Yeah.
economy, but they still need it.
There's $250,000 in the budget. That's good.
That's part of living in.
What I,
Yeah, we're
what
just
I,
talking about having fun. What are you doing?
it's part of fun, it's just switching the fun. I don't golf, I need to see, Anthony, you gotta take me out.
Close Ocean View Golf Course. We'll find out what ward he wants to win tonight.
My one concern was, you know, we hired consultants to do a Parks and Recreation study. I don't know if, when that was done, if they considered the issue with Fleet Park. I don't think Fleet Park, we knew was closing then. So I'm just wondering if our park study, if we should relook at that in the bigger plan. I don't know if it's already been done or not, and how that impacts it, because if we don't have the room or the facility for it, you know, how can we make that work? And I don't know, you guys are getting ready to present this, or?
This month.
Yes.
This month.
This month, so I don't know if
Yeah,
it needs.
it's coming to the committee this month.
Okay, I don't know if that needs to be reconsidered because of it. The other thing I wanted to mention too is, as we close school buildings, there's potential for open land there. You know, you look at Coronado, and if that building is not gonna be, you know, if it can't be utilized, could you put ball fields in that area? There's some land, open land around it. It is close enough to the Fleet Park area. It brings in the inner city. We can expand a little bit. I understand the politics behind that, but
It's not large.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, and I don't want to offer tearing down Stewart, but I mean, there might be other buildings down the road. Once again, it's working with the schools, that if we take those buildings down, is there enough land there that you could assemble another place for a
That might be a
facility?
permanent solution.
Meadowbrook.
That's way too small.
It's gotta, these kids need to, you know, start playing next spring. It's,
Right.
we've been.
Well, and it might be
Then
a
it needs the
temporary.
Navy and everybody
Right.
else.
But it came up on us kind of fast, and you know, it might mean a temporary location for, until we get a master plan that includes these ball fields. I know that we don't want to jump on anything though too quickly, if we haven't considered the data and what it is. I mean, I was looking behind Larry Moore Elementary. I brought this up to Marcus, that behind Larry Moore, there's tons of space. There's 2 baseball fields that are covered in grass that haven't been utilized. There's a parking issue over there, but you could put almost 4 baseball fields on one side and 2 smaller fields on the other.
Well, you know,
I mean,
that's,
there's, I mean,
we've taken to Marcus and Darrell, to evaluate everything we had, so I feel like they've done a good job at that.
Right.
I mean, if you've got a, you know, I'm all about it, if it works, and it's essential that we can get, and keep the kids playing, that's not.
Central, anywhere in Norfolk, it's 10, 15 minutes.
Andy is the chairman of the Highway Safety Commission.
I'm not going to take your call. Highway Safety Commission met today, and I don't know if you've received in the past any briefing as to what was ever discussed.
I would say no,
Okay.
because I used to do this.
Well, I'm just going to just say that a couple things that we hit on today, because I think it really, some of it, I think that deals with a couple of the wards. Safety City, we were briefed today by the Sheriff's Office. It's going to have to move from where it is now at Lafayette Park. The segue was perfect. It's because the zoo is expanding its hospital there. just gonna have to move from there, and there will be some examination about moving it, and they're talking to Norfolk Public Schools about moving it, co-locating it with the school. I don't know if that's gonna happen or not, but it was discussed, and there was a rep from the sheriff's office and the school board there. With regard to, for the city attorney, there was, if you could look at the ordinance involving riding bikes on sidewalks and where we are on that, and what are other cities doing, and is it illegal per se, or can we get away from that?
It's council's discretion.
All right, if you could let us know what the ordinance is now, because I know there is one now.
There is.
And where we are, and you and I can talk offline about that. Paul, you had asked about the Hampton Boulevard accident, and did you ever get an answer? Well, I asked them to follow up with that.
Huh? No, I saw that little two-page memo. I mean, I got a memo, but that wasn't.
And I know that, Terry, you wanted to know about it too, and I asked the representative from Norfolk PD, I said that you had asked and you had wanted a report as to what happened, what went on with regard to the tractor trailer flipping over. Well, I did receive an answer, whether it's the official answer or not, but I said you wanted a memo back, and they're following up.
Yeah, and Stanley, I'm not talking about a police investigation, a report that a guy took on the accident scene. There are people in this community who believe the guys who were running the tractor trailers have a bad track record out there, and there's some people. I mean, there's a whole. I don't want to go into all of this, but I mean, there are. I mean, we got to do better. I mean, we got to do better than just. I mean, how come this tractor trailer turned over at that corner? You know, and you got to look beneath the concerns. Even the guys at the port, if you just picked up the phone and called them, they have a whole different attitude about this than our police department, where the guy said, "Well, you know, the load shifted in the trailer."
I did speak to the owner of the trucking company, and while they stuck to their story, I guess would be
of course he's going to stick to the story.
The trailer that they had was locked in terms of its shipping to here, and the trucker did not unlock it, did not go inside it to check the load and everything. So they just took this big trailer and put it on a chassis, and he hooked it to his vehicle and left. There were no skid marks in the road to suggest speed or something of that nature, external, that would cause it to occur. We now are taking that information and talking with NIT and with the trucking industry generally to tell them that this is just not acceptable.
And there may be some recommendations coming out of what you're going to receive. That was mentioned, speed limit recommendations. So you're going to, but I asked them that you and Terry both had asked about it. So they're supposed to follow up with it.
Okay.
And I mean,
well, maybe at some point I'll tell you what, at least what I'm hearing from the guys at the port, what they think is going on. Okay. And it isn't just that a load shifted. Okay.
I had asked Norfolk PD today if they could look into, and this maybe have to be coordinated with your office, and I don't know if it's really your office or Cumberland Attorney's office, but the issue with these buses, I guess for lack of a better term, the Chinese buses, that came up, and the discussion is about there seems to be an issue regulating them or not. And my request was that the sergeant from Norfolk PD was to meet with you or the Commonwealth Attorney to see which statutes or ordinances are more applicable, and go out there to where, before the buses leave, where a motor carrier stops the vehicles as they enter the port at times, where I've seen on Hampton Boulevard where they're there. Perhaps
that's us, then, right?
City Attorney's office.
Yeah.
Well, and the idea was go ahead and begin enforcement locally. Don't worry about federal statutes right now. Begin enforcement locally. Go out there, check the buses, check the driver, check the qualifications, check to see if they're registered and inspected. Get that done now to protect citizens. We can do that at a minimum, and they're supposed to get up with you on that.
Andy, I read in the paper that was it a military highway they were stopping?
This is,
The
Newtown
Chinese.
Road, pick them up.
Yeah, but that's in the beach.
that's at the beach, that's not us.
My
That's-
daughter has ridden that thing.
Yeah, I thought there was
Not
one
anymore,
that was in
but
a
I mean,
military
My entire
circle.
staff goes every year.
You know, but
Was there one in military circle?
there was a comment in the paper within the past a few days about being in Norfolk.
Yeah,
And I
that's
wasn't
what I
aware
thought.
of one in Norfolk.
Well, if there is,
They're
that's
talking about Atlantic City and places like that.
Maybe it's the Atlantic City
There's
piece,
an Atlantic City bus, but the New York one is on Newtown Road.
which is in the beach.
well, I asked
On the
them
other side of
to
the
check to
street?
see.
Sure.
Well,
There was one in Norfolk on Military Highway.
there was
That
one.
ran buses back and forth to New York. There was one in Norfolk. I don't know
Yeah.
if they still do it anymore, but there was one. It was right there in
We
Papa
just need
Hall.
to check that out.
That's it.
Yep, it was right there in Papa Hall. They were
Yeah.
operating out of a beauty
So they're gonna,
salon.
yeah, they're gonna check, and if that be the case, then I asked them if they could, and to get with the common attorney or city attorney on that. If we could, Marcus, there was discussion last year about, with Daryl, if we could, our Parks and Rec plan. I mean, if remember the fund that we just talked about, if we could see where it is, because part of that is the bike plan, bike share, and I know Terry's big into this, and they gave a report, we had 600 bike riders in the month of May that participated in Norfolk. They want to try to do it again. Paul Forehand discussed that, talk about maybe doing it again in the fall. But the idea would be is if we could see where we are on that.
It'll be to the committee this month.
All right, because now there's some important things that we did discuss with certain lanes, trying to get, once the underpass is done, to try to get to the base by bike with either share or lane, whatever is more appropriate. And lastly, Powhatan Field. Terry, I know it's in the ward. I rode my bike up there the other day. I asked them to look. There's no place to park a bike. ODU's got bike racks everywhere, and I know we put 3 bikes, and we weren't the only ones around a lamppost. Maybe that would be someplace that we could look to put a bike stand, or that we could park our bikes there, because Powhatan doesn't have it. Even ironically, of all the places ODU has, almost in front of every building, I didn't see any on that side of Powhatan. So,
There's some further down at the
Are they?
athletic buildings, but not
Okay.
right there at the.
because I looked, I didn't see them. I was more focused on getting to Powhatan, but I did on the way out try to check. But that may be a place that we could look if we have a budget. We can just put something there. That was. Did I miss anything, Brian?
You wanted to find out where we are on the master plan
Yeah, I did. Marcus said next month or so.
and then the bike plans.
Yeah, well, the bike, and he said that.
And a biking commission too, we had talked about.
I think a biking should be great. I mean, if we could, even if we do it, if we formally do it, it shows we're serious about fun.
Believe it or not, another section of the Wizard River Trail is out
That's
to
all
bid.
that's what we did.
Out to bid.
Well, we did talk about that too.
Would that be 1/8 of a mile or what?
If you ever wanted to add to your undesignated reserve, all you gotta
Can't
do
have
is
the
just
Elizabeth
nibble.
Trail.
There's more money in the Elizabeth River Fund.
Pick it up
They
right
can't
behind
spend it
right
fast
up the
enough.
foot of the
My
bridge.
house. The sign's right there. I had no idea.
Right at the foot of the bridge, it goes behind,
Okay. All right, then we're off at 6 o'clock. We'll see you at 6 o'clock, Grant.
do we,
Oh,
you're gonna get with the,
We didn't do, council concern.
No, mine was just to tell you what happened at the safety commission. I didn't have council concerns. I was just reporting on the commission that met.
You want to do that? Paul, you got something?
I don't
to
have
add?
anything.
I'll hold off.
I got one more thing, and I've talked to you, Paul, and
Yeah, those weren't concerns. I was just.
to the city manager about, we have a pre-qualification out. We talked about that for the new courthouse building. And it's so stringent that nobody in the state of Virginia can bid it. Are we working to change that?
Yes, Public Works and myself and the city attorney's office met on that yesterday, and are working on some adjustments.
Very strict set of rules, and I think it would not be to our advantage to eliminate every contractor in the state of Virginia.
For the clarification of the council note, I think, we had some consultants, architects that had used some language that they had received in other jobs that they had done and everything, so it was not any overt attempt for us to restrict it, other than to try to get companies that were steeped in large courthouse type
Well, you need to
projects
get
and
a
everything. We
handle on
might
it.
have gotten a little overboard
There are at
for
least
making adjustments.
There are 2 issues about qualified.
Safety ratings.
About the safety rating issue is so tight that nobody in Virginia can qualify, that I'm aware of. Anyway, unless you're a general contractor from out of state who just comes in and hires local subs. And the other one is, you're experiencing in building courthouses of $75 million or more, and nobody's built one of those
It's
around
like
here.
three in the last 2 years.
No, there hadn't, no,
They've
they're
been
not.
built in the whole country.
So, it's that type of stuff. It looks like it is, and I'm glad you made that statement, Stanley. But if you were, it looks like it's built that you're going to limit the number of people who can bid on this thing. We don't want that to happen because it'll drive the price up, and everybody who bids on it will come from out of state.
Right.
So
It almost looked like the architects and engineers were trying to steer it to a certain
national.
out-of-state
sir.
contractor. But anyway, I've had a call, and Paul's had a call. We need to fix that.
We're working on it.
But we don't want to put it off anymore.
Okay, Park, is that it?
It's just a pre-qualification package.
Right, no, he meant that. We don't want to slide this.
Right, we don't want to slide the timeline back.
It's a matter of changing.
I know, but if we don't.
He's agreeing with you, Mark.
Right.
Okay. All right, next.
I'm all for backing it up.
Next.
Just very quickly, we haven't really had a report on light rail, and I would really like to know what our plans are as far as advertising this, the send-off, what we're doing, to say nothing of start date, the finances, but I think it's time for another update.
We're in the process of having that for you on the 21st of this month, and actually being outside of the building, maybe even riding it.
But I want to hear
What's an update?
about how this is going to be sold to the community, because I have heard nothing other than a little bit on safety. And I have people saying to me, where does it start, where does it end? Oh, you mean there'll be parking? Nobody knows anything.
Yep.
And we need to get this thing off and on a great start.
Right. As a matter of fact.
So I'm happy to have a ride, but I need more than that.
Sure. No, as a matter of fact, you're exactly right. The focus has been on construction and safety. And I've had a series of conversations with Philip Chiquette about we have to switch this focus to the whole marketing. And Bob Batcher's been working very hard, and so has John Kiefer. And we're getting there, not where I'd like to be at this date, but we are getting a lot of progress, a lot of traction on not just day one, but also the whole implementation strategy in terms of ridership.
And are we taking advantage of some of the marketing skills of some of our citizens and our firms in the
Yes.
town?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, because there's so many of
Yes.
them that are anxious to really sell this idea. We need to take advantage of their expertise.
We have been,
And their
yes.
energy.
Marcus, we might need to set aside an extra day or something.
Okay.
We have a special meeting on light rail. I mean, we not only need the marketing plan, but we need the operational plan. Who's going to clean up the stations? And if we're going to let our HRT do it, that isn't going to work. I mean, that is just not.
They have a contract now, right?
Yeah, I mean, but they.
But it's not HIG.
Yeah, but I mean, they're not going to maintain the station at Ingleside the way we wanted to maintain, and we've heard enough about that. They're not going to maintain the one at the medical school, or we need an operational plan that the city is working in conjunction with HRT. We need a marketing plan. We need we need the kickoff plan. How we're going to celebrate. This is a tremendous investment in the city's future. It is an investment in our economy and in our environment. And we all need to be saying the same thing at the same moment and get up and say, this is about the future of the city. And we need that type of strategy here. Okay, and we all need to be like one big team or whatever you want to call it. I mean, we need a common strategy that we're all saying the same thing at the same time. Okay?
I agree.
think in our hearts we feel the same way, but okay, and time's passing us.
And without going into the light.
So this is your 198th day in
No.
job.
No, it's only about 125. Don't rush it.
I'll just put it this way.
Need it this
A
way.
lot has changed in the last couple of weeks in terms of reshifting the focus of light rail. So I'm not pleased where we are,
Okay.
given how close we are, but I'm very pleased with the last 2 weeks of discussion.
I'll go back, and I know this is an issue we need to talk about with school, but I had a couple of folks call me as it relates to the Northview track and told me that they saw folk going in, taking the key, opening the track, going in, running around the track, coming out and locking the the track back up. I mean, that to me is unacceptable. Again, that track belonged to the taxpayers of this city. And I continue to talk about it. I don't know who we need to talk to, but that can't happen. We can't have folk that got private keys and come in and work out on the track and then lock you back up, and folk that the community can't access the track. The second thing is, I was out doing my run this morning, and I was out at Delinear Park in Broad Creek, and I understand that they did some digging to put the uplighting in, and whoever the electrician is connected the electrical to the plumbing, the water. They took the conduits from the electric and tied them into the fountain. Yeah, yeah, I was out there this morning. So yeah, they were taking it apart. But yeah, whoever.
We'll get it together.
Okay.
That's just shocking.
The mayor at the State of the City a year ago brought up, we were going to start this youth and gang task force. I'm very committed to that, as well as the mayor. I know that this council is. One of the things I'm real concerned with, because talking to some of the guys that are in the gang squad, it's kind of been left. You know, there was never a clear understanding. It was Barbara Lott, you know, supposedly not supposed to answer to, but obviously that's the way that the line of communication was set up. I always thought that because they're out there doing the day-to-day, that they should be driving the train as it relates to that whole effort. That has not been the case. I don't know where that is today, but I do think that is important as the gang squad is out there doing their job, that we put together this task force, because that's the other critical piece of it, to put all of these services together so we can help young people out of the game. The focus shouldn't be to incarcerate these young people. Is to give them alternatives to a gang lifestyle. And so, you know, by putting all of these providers, this Commonwealth Attorney's Office, Human Service, Social Services, the city's resources, Norfolk Public Schools, getting everybody to the table and having this task force so we can have shared resources. When we rolled out that video and went around and I had these 4 town hall meetings, there was a promise made to the community in terms of being able to get information, understanding that it's hard to get, well, it's hard to get out of a gang, and that we would help these parents who needed help in terms of trying to get their kids out of a gang. And we don't have the infrastructure in place right now to be able to help these folks. And so I just think that that's important. That's a commitment that we made, and that's one that we should keep. And so, you know, you're here now, and I understand. I knew that the manager in the past didn't want council people involved with that task force. Well, I wanted to be involved with that task force. That's why the mayor said what he said, because I think at the end of the day, you need council input, people that are committed to their overall effort and understand what's going on out there in the street. So I'm putting that in your hands in terms of setting up a meeting so we can get folk to the table, but at the same time asking you to give the gentlemen and young ladies out there day to day and night to night the help that they need, or the resources that they need to be successful in terms of combating this issue. I got on Maypole Avenue, 1026, 1046, and 1050. I'll give this to you. These homes have been vacant for 3 years. I'm trying to figure out now if they're on the derelict structure list. There's a lot of illicit activity taking place in these dwellings. So I would hope high grass and so forth and so on. south side. I know a couple of businesses have gotten letters that they're going to have to relocate. One of the things that I talk about is business retention. We're moving these, but we're telling these businesses that they have to go. So I would hope that we're assisting and helping these businesses find other locations, as well as making sure that these businesses, because of due to our insistence that these businesses do not go out of it, that we would give them some relocation assistance or help these businesses to be stable. So I'm hoping that will take place, because I've gotten a few calls from the businesses. They got letters. They were supposed to be 6 months, but you did give them a year. That's very important. I think that we always talk about small businesses. We can't keep small. If we're forcing small businesses out of business, then that's not what we should be in the business of doing. So that's all I got.
Angela?
Last night I was over in Poplar Hall with the Civic League, and I'd seen this and understand the zoning of it, but there's a gun shop that's opened that's right in over at Best Square, and it's my understanding that they relocated from Curlew Drive, and that they have gone above and beyond everything that is required of them to be safe, and that's really all that we can ask. But the residents were very concerned that a gun shop would open in their neighborhood without some kind of notification to them. So, and I explained that if they're within the required zoning and they go and get a business license or transfer a license, that there's no notification required because the business activity is within the required zoning. However, when it comes to gun shops in a neighborhood and being so close to a school, is there something that we can create an ordinance for, perhaps, that requires a gun shop owner or potential, regardless of the zoning, that they come before council, or that we have to notify the neighborhood, the civic, some kind of notification to the neighbor if they're going to be in anything other than.
Our friends, the gun lobbyists, have got our hands tied with regulation of the sale of guns, so that we couldn't require them to provide notice. As you say, they're the type of retail establishment that has to have a business license. So if there's any information in our system where we're informed, we could take the notification obligation ourselves. But that because of the gun lobby statute prohibiting our addressing guns and sale, we can't do it by special exception. But we could provide notice if we had a mechanism to know. And it may be that in the business licensing process that the assessor is informed, the Commissioner of Revenue is informed of the nature of the business and getting the business application. So if we got that information, we could endeavor to provide.
And zoning, because when they come to get a license or when they transfer their business license address, they have to go up to zoning. They have to provide either proof of ownership of the business location, or they have to provide a lease. So either the Commissioner of Revenue's office, when they make application, or the zoning office can at least let us know that this is and then the neighbors can be,
we'll take a look at that and get
Yeah.
back to you about
Okay.
what we can do and how far the notification should go. So well, let's get back to you on that.
Angela, Mr. Riddick already brought that up. Not at one of these meetings, but he's aware of it too. He's part of that. I think he mentioned it to the manager, he mentioned it to me. Everybody's concerned.
Two quick things. One, can we get a code sweep through Little Creek Road, East Little Creek Road? I don't think one's been done in a while, and you go and look at some of the commercial properties out there, they're trying to get away with stuff. I've addressed the signs. I think the week after you guys went out and addressed it, they put them right back up. And I sent Stanley a list last night of council concerns, and I think 3 or 4 of them were properties on Little Creek Road they're just getting away with murder over there, and it looks bad. It looks really bad. Barclay probably gets just many complaints. The other one is we have a lot of boards and commission members that their terms are expiring, and I know that we're going to be dealing with the school board appointment, but I'm hoping that before we go on our break for the summer that we can dedicate another meeting for appointments and maybe get the information to us of who's coming off so we can start now with trying to find people with it, because if we break for July, I think there's another 30 coming up for expiration this summer, and so they just keep on, dragging on.
There are a couple that need to be replaced anyhow, whether they're coming off or not.
Well, we had talked before you all joined council that we would, Breck would get to us on a quarterly basis, and so that's established. But it's a good idea to get the
Just get it on the
information ahead of
calendar,
time. It shouldn't be done sporadically, it should be done every quarter and done on time.
Yeah, I just
And
worry
Breck
that
is doing that.
we discuss it 1 week, and then we have 1 week to find people, basically.
Right,
And
no, it's important to know.
And if you haven't looked, the clerk's office has done a great job making the application online. You can submit it electronically, and it's just much user-friendly, and if we can get that out to constituents and let them know that it's available.
Pull me out, boss. Pour us out, and we got another round.
Okay. Done, Tommy?
Yeah.
Okay. Done. All right.
So we're meeting at 6 or at 7?